Weird. Sorry.
Oh, what the fuck? Why? Hold on.
It's all right.
Why am I hearing you through my fucking speakers?
Change your audio
Change your
feed
settings and
There we go. Fucking
yeah,
got it.
there you go.
All right. Sorry. Yeah, this time it was just I was like, oh, 9:15. I got an hour. And I was like, oh shit, it's Eastern.
You're gonna continue to disappoint me, Misfit. I have a no-no list for people who come in late.
Uh-oh. It's I'm not making excuses, but it has been a really rough week. I'm going up to Boston to do my mom's memorial, so I've just been packing and all sorts of shit. So my bad. It won't happen again.
Oh, I'm sorry about your mom.
Oh, thanks, brother.
Oh.
Yeah, people say some dumb shit on the internet about
Oh
that.
my
God. That was
God.
pissing
They
me
say
off.
some horrible shit about that. It's just it's ridiculous.
It's wild, man.
That's low for me. Like in my mind, like you just go burn in hell for all I care.
You should see what they privately send me. It's wild.
Nuh-uh.
Oh yeah, they send me pictures of her like superimposed on porn and pictures of her on her deathbed. It's wild, man.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Fucking ugh. All right. TLDR for you, Misfit Patriot. Don't interrupt the whole time. We don't like interruptions here. You obviously are aware of that. I think you're pretty cordial. We'll do opening statements 4 minutes each. Then we'll run through the debate. We'll do closing statements, read and respond to super chats, and then we go into open panel. Open panel is, as always, optional. You can choose to stay or go. Up to you. Any questions?
No.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to put you backstage. I've got about a 2.5 minute opening intro. When it says, when I bring you back upstage, that should kind of let you know that you have about 30 seconds left. Don't be picking your nose or doing stupid faces during that time. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let's have fun.
Thank you. Yep.
Captain's log, June 2nd, 2836. After 27 years of war between the Degen Coomers and the Sainthood Slayers, a new hope arises. As the battlefield lay weaponized, locked and loaded for destruction, negotiations for a peace treaty are in transition. The moderator has arrived at Station 42. Can this war be ended? Will the Coomers and Slayers find a middle ground?
Abort mission. I repeat, abort mission. Negotiation failure. Abort mission.
Then go to your window and look up their biggest fracking asteroid. Copy, Yashin. Still blind. Got some kind of system-wide crash in the defense grid. Come on, track yourself right goddamn now, because we got Boku inbound, and they're not carrying flow. Wait one, Yashin. We don't have flow.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I am the Raging Tomato here, bringing to you live another Moderator Monday. This evening, the question is Trump one of the greatest threats to free speech we've seen in the last 20 years? On the affirmative side, I have Whick TV and Pisco's Hour. On the negative side, I have Shawn Farash and the Misfit Patriot, who's making his double debut back from last night. If you didn't catch it, you're missing out. Gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and start with opening statements. Whick, to you.
Sure. Tonight, I'm here to defend free speech, and it needs our defense today more than it has in a very long time. I'm going to read you a quote from the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. And look, I get it. I'm a Biden voter. I'm a Democrat, a liberal. Why would you ever believe me, right? But Fire's been in the trenches for free speech for people across the political spectrum since 1999. They've gone to war for you. They've defended Turning Point USA. They've defended the ADF, or the Alliance for Defending Freedom. They've gone to bat for conservative after conservative after conservative, including individuals and organizations, and opposed Democratic and leftist efforts to deplatform or cancel. And in regards to the current Trump administration and their relationship to free speech, this is what their legal director had to say couple weeks ago. He says this, and I quote, "In my career, I have never seen this scope, this scale, and this severity of what we've seen in the last 3 months," end quote. The Trump administration is retaliating against lawful immigrants who write op-eds expressing views they do not like by revoking their visas and seeking to detain and deport them. The Trump administration is retaliating against editorial discretion and opinions it does not like by weaponizing access to the press pool for press organizations. The Trump administration is retaliating against law firms that represent clients they do not like by banning them from buildings and stripping their clearances. The Trump administration is seeking to force colleges and universities to change their curriculum, violating their academic freedoms. The Trump administration is weaponizing the FCC against its political enemies, seeking to bring suit to those media organizations critical of him whilst protecting ones that view him favorably. The Trump administration is engaging in countless frivolous lawsuits it knows it cannot win in order to intimidate its critics into silence. The presidency has a wide array of legitimate powers it is granted by the Constitution and is granted wide discretion in how it uses those powers. But legitimate power can be used for illegitimate purposes, and that is exactly what is happening when Trump uses the power granted to him by the Constitution to try and attack and curtail your free speech. It is a full-scale assault on our liberty and the cornerstone of our freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Whick. Pisco, to you.
Yeah, they're not even trying to hide it at this point. So they're running numerous test cases that have already been struck down in preliminary injunctions or in TROs. So one example that Whick brought up was the attack on law firms. I mean, their stated purposes there are for the law firm's representation of clients. That's private speech that's well been protected by the Supreme Court for decades and decades and decades. They've also said it's because of their positions on DEI. Whatever you want to think about DEI, that's First Amendment expression and associational activities. None of the allegations allege that what they're doing with law firms were doing with their policies was, racially illegal or illegal under the anti-discrimination frameworks. They do the same thing with the immigrants who are protected by the First Amendment under binding Supreme Court precedent, saying, because Mahmoud Khalil or other individuals in these protests are just involved with Israel or pro-Palestinian protests, more properly calibrated, that they're a detriment to national security interests of the United States. And it's all pretextual and it's all in your face, open and blatant. They're trying to have a communist takeover, a Stalinist-like takeover of the universities, because they're not clamping down on anti-Semitism enough. Anti-Semitism, whatever you want to say for, if these protests really are anti-Semitic, I don't believe many of them are, though there are anti-Semitic elements in them. But regardless, anti-Semitism is protected by the First Amendment, even if it were the case. And they're trying to take over these universities openly, blatantly. And now there's a big lawsuit over it. I mean, Whick already mentioned FIRE, which is a respected organization in terms of their defense of the First Amendment. But there's a more core reason why you should be fearful of this administration with the First Amendment is their attacks on due process. Every single one of your rights is protected by due process. What does it mean to have the First Amendment or the Second Amendment if you're not able to have a hearing or access courthouses or go to a trial, even if it's in the case of a criminal conviction of yourself. And what the administration has been doing is trying to coerce judges, to coerce litigants, to coerce defendants, and the most vulnerable among us to really deny them due process. Right now, it's happening mostly with the immigrants and people who are here, allegedly illegally, or have pathways to perhaps some defensive relief. But in denying due process for some, they're opening up a can of worms against any individual who's claiming that their deprivation of liberty or their deprivation, let's say, of some right or some benefit is on the basis of First Amendment retaliation. You just heard Stephen Miller say they're talking about suspending habeas corpus. Well, what is the suspension of habeas corpus in the modern context besides, an invitation for the administration to start throwing people in jail because they say things they don't like? If you don't think that this is a danger to you or your rights, especially the First Amendment, or that Trump isn't capable of wielding the administrative, office against his enemies for political reasons, you haven't been paying attention. He's openly in the Oval Office targeting former bureaucrats because of their expression. Because they said that the election wasn't stolen. He's, revoking global entry, saying that he's going to publicly announce criminal investigations into people because of that. Attacking, as Whick mentioned, these frivolous lawsuits over the coverage of the CBS interview. If any of this shit was happening by the left in the era of Biden, you guys would be losing your fucking minds. And it's a disgrace that you come in here and say it's not an actual threat to the First Amendment. What you have instead are these woke righties who want to employ all the tactics they say they don't like from the woke left on campuses when it was done by private actors. And now when the government is actually engaging in coercion and using the tools and instruments of its authority to go after people on the basis of their protected First Amendment activities, they sleep and they don't give a fuck about it. It's classic woke tactics being used by the government, actually.
Thank you, Pisco. And Shawn, to you.
Sure. Thank you. The title of this show is Trump one of the greatest threats to free speech that we've seen in the last 20 years? And I would have to say that obviously he is not one of the greatest threats to free speech that we have seen in the last 20 years. If we take a look at what the Biden regime did to concerned parents at school board meetings, putting them on terrorist watch lists, if you've seen what the Biden regime had done to folks who attended a protest on January 6th, who, albeit some of them may have gotten out of control, right? But when we have a conversation about due process, where was the due process for those protesters and those attendees who did not get their right to a fair trial? There is no fair trial in which a conservative can stand trial in a jurisdiction like Washington, D.C., where 95% of the people who you're going to be picking from the jury pool voted for a Democrat and will always vote for a Democrat. And there were change of venue requests that were made in those cases and in those proceedings that were swiftly denied by activist D.C. judges, right? If you look at the Biden regime and what the last regime did, we can have a conversation about them being the greatest or potentially the worst threat to free speech in the history of our country, weaponizing speech online, deplatforming people, debanking people, the cancel culture mobs that were encouraged by the last administration, bailed out of jail by the last administration. When you look at Donald Trump and you want to say that maybe he's a threat to the First Amendment, we can talk about there are things that he may or may not be doing that could threaten your right to free speech. But to call him one of the greatest threats in the last 20 years, I think is an overreaction. I honestly think it's either hyperbolic or flatly dramatic to say that he is one of the greatest threats to free speech over the last 20 years. One of the gentlemen who just went before mentioned he's making colleges change their curriculum. I'm not exactly sure which curriculum or which items in a college curriculum. I know that he is making sure that these colleges don't allow men to play in sports with women. I don't believe that's part of the curriculum. That is part of their athletic outfit, but that's not a part of their curriculum. I heard somebody mention that the anti-Semitic protests or anti-Israel protests. One of my favorite things to hear is that Donald Trump is making criticism of Israel and anti-Semitism illegal. No, he's not making it illegal. What he is making illegal, or it's not, he hasn't made it illegal. It's already illegal. It's a violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 373. It's the solicitation to violence, right? Soliciting violence is illegal. Calling for intifada, which by definition, is a violent uprising of the Palestinian people, is illegal. You're calling for a violent uprising. Immigrants when you talk about immigrants and say that they're allegedly illegal. How about an immigrant like Gilmar Abrego Garcia, who isn't allegedly illegal? He's admittedly illegal. That man does not belong in our country. There is a way to come here. There is a way not to come here. Has nothing to do with his free speech or his due process rights. That man admitted to being here illegally. He is ripe for deportation. You had multiple courts, a police gang unit, his knuckles, other gang members, his wife's ex-husband, his wife, and so many other people saying that this man is a part of a gang. I don't know how much more evidence we need to be concerned about this man's existence in our country. And finally, what I will say about that, and when it comes down to illegal aliens, when it comes down to the right to due process, yes, that is something that is granted to all American citizens. And if all of us on stage are American citizens, I will fight to my death to make sure that your due process rights aren't violated, because I believe in the Constitution. I believe that we all, despite who you voted for, Whick said he's a Biden voter. Pisco, I don't know who you voted for. That's okay. It doesn't really matter to me, right? We're all American brothers and sisters. If we're legally citizens of the United States, I'll fight for your right to free speech. I hate cancel culture. I hate seeing people get banned. I hate seeing people taken off the internet, demonetized and censored and losing their platform. I do not believe that Donald Trump is one of the greatest threats to free speech that we've seen in the last 20 years. I do not believe that he is a greater threat than the previous administration when it comes to free speech. I do not believe that he was as big a threat as Barack Obama. And I believe the idea that he's one of the greatest threats to free speech over the last 20 years is preposterous.
Thank you, Shawn. Misfit, to you.
Yeah, so the 20 years thing, I thought that was interesting, because we would be going back to Obama, who basically made propaganda legal. And I just thought that was funny. I just thought of that before I was about to start speaking, completely unrelated. But I heard one of I think it was Whick, say lawful immigrants, right? So I'd like to know, once we get into the debate, are you defining lawful immigrant as a United States citizen? Because then you'd have an argument. If you're talking about an undocumented immigrant, they're not lawful. The thing is, when you try to make an argument that Donald Trump is a threat to free speech, you have to look at his actions instead of thinking about your feelings about what he says, right? Number one, just in this administration, not even his first one, the executive order restoring freedom of speech and ending federal censorship, right? This order was signed to prevent federal agencies from pressuring social media platforms to censor content. Okay. His public statements about the universities and protests and what have you, removing federal funding from certain universities that are engaging in certain practices, that's his right. He doesn't have to give these people federal funding, right? It's at his purview. And the main argument I think that people are going to make on the opposing side is the due process argument, right? Here's the deal. If you're referring to visa holders or undocumented immigrants, the rights that they hold are the First Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fourth Amendment, and the due process that they are owed if they are a visa holder, right, in regards to those, is limited. Now, if you are talking about an undocumented immigrant or an illegal immigrant, right, the only due process that they have once they are found to have come into the country illegally is the process of removing them. That's the due process. So once they are found to be, like Gilmar Abrego Garcia, right, you're an MS-13 member. Donald Trump has designated the MS-13 a foreign terrorist organization, right? So we're not talking about free speech between free-loving Americans. And I think that that's the thing that you guys conflate. You try to make it this broad scope thing, like Donald Trump is going after a certain group of people. He could go after you and me next, but he's not, right? What he's doing is he's tying in foreign terrorist organizations to potential ways to combat people that either are in or are aligning with foreign terrorist organizations. Hamas is a foreign terrorist organization, right? They are terrorists. They are radical Islamic terrorists. So when you have anti-Israel protests, if they are just an anti-Israel protest, and what we talk about with protests on the right, I know you guys don't view it this way. A protest, a peaceful protest, is when you grab a license, you make sure that you get the organizers together, you do it lawfully, legally, you assemble peacefully, you don't restrict kids from going to class, you don't threaten people, you don't do any illegal activity. And protesting, by the way, which is your First Amendment right, the right to peaceful assembly has to be peaceful. The only thing that you can do in that is peaceful assembly. The second one person in the entire group goes and does something illegal, like let's say throws a bottle at the opposing side, assault, vandalism, any type of illegal activity, your entire group is now lumped into that. So when Donald Trump says, "Hey, we got this college protester who is we're gonna remove his visa, we're gonna kick him out of the country because he's engaged in alignment with a foreign terrorist organization and organizing a protest that is not peaceful," then he's organizing illegal activity. So there is no argument to be made for any undocumented immigrant. There's no argument to be made for any visa holder that's not adhering to the laws of the land. You can still have the First Amendment protection where you can legally do things. You can still have the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment protections, but you don't have the right to I guess you could say skirt the law, and you don't have the right to walk up to the line of what is legal and isn't legal in this country and go, "Hey, if I did something, then I have the same exact protections as United States citizens," because you don't. That's it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your statements, gentlemen. Kind reminder to the audience, we will go into an open panel dumpster fire at the end of this. We'll do the debate, we'll do closing statements, we will read and respond to your super chats, and then we will open the panel up to the public. Gentlemen, I leave the floor open to you.
Okay.
Is independent advocacy for Palestine or for Hamas or anti-Semitism, is that protected by the First Amendment, yes or no?
Independent.
What was the question?
Is independent advocacy, speech in favor of Hamas, speech in favor of Palestine? Let's start with Hamas. Is that speech protected by the First Amendment, yes or no?
No.
Okay.
No, because that is speech. That is speech. And I'll just explain. That is speech advocating for a group that has been designated a foreign terrorist organization. Terrorism is not legal. Advocating for terrorism is not legal in the United States.
So are you aware with Brandenburg standard for incitement? Okay, so you understand that pure abstract advocacy, for a violent group or even a violent end, that's protected speech recognized by the Supreme Court. You can support, if you want to, Al Qaeda. You can voice your support for Al Qaeda. Do you think that's not protected speech by the First Amendment in this country?
The Brandenburg test does not cover what you're saying it covers.
Yes,
it is
it
a
does.
violation.
Does it cover KKK? Does it cover the KKK, for example?
It is a violation of
Does it cover
18
KKK?
U.S. Code, Section 373, solicitation to commit a crime of violence. If you are, that is a felony. That is a federal felony.
So solicitation isn't what we're talking about, right? So solicitation has to do with
contextualizing
to it. But to be clear, 100% clear. Are you saying that if I go out on the street and I say, I support Al Qaeda, I support Hamas, and I'm on the street waving signs saying, I support Al Qaeda, is that protected speech?
That is. If you just do that.
So if someone says so if I go outside and say, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is that protected speech? Why not?
Because you're calling for a genocide. You're calling for a genocide.
Because so why don't we start with this? From what river?
Hold up. Let's just go.
From what river to what sea, Pisco?
Well, no. Granted means what you think. Grant that it means that.
It's not what I think. From what river to what sea?
No, I'm not. Yeah. So from the Jordan River to the to the Mediterranean.
And what exists between those two bodies of water?
But it doesn't. Yeah. So we're not here to debate what they mean. Take it for granted.
Well, you just asked the question, so I'd like to know what you mean.
No, I didn't actually ask what it meant. So take it for granted. Take it for granted that what's meant is genocide. Isn't it First Amendment protected speech to say I support genocide? What's wrong?
Yes,
why is that not protected speech?
If it's in support of a foreign terrorist organization, then no. Right?
Yes, it is. You are just wrong.
An American can sit here and say, so just for example, someone who says I support the Holocaust. If someone says I support the Holocaust, you think that's not protected speech?
You support the Holocaust? No, supporting is not illegal. Calling for action is illegal, right?
No, you can. Hold on. I just need to correct you because you can.
Support,
I can say. Hold on. I can. Hold on.
Saying I like that Hamas.
I get what you're saying.
Is fine. Saying from the river to the sea, the implication is you're trying to incite Hamas to engage in a genocide.
But it is. Hold on.
Hold
on.
Saying you support the genocide that has happened is different. It's over. You're not calling for it.
Okay. So
to you.
I understand what you're saying, but what I am saying is that you can go and you can say, I want there to be another genocide, and that is protected speech. It's horrible. It's horrific.
100%
it's
it
gross.
is.
But you can say, I want there to be another Holocaust. I want there to be another genocide. I think the Jews should be Holocausted. You can say that, and the government cannot arrest you for it.
No, yeah, you're right.
You agree? Wait, do you agree?
wanting and hoping, not
No,
not illegal.
I want there, and I hope it is.
I want it to occur. Yeah.
And you guys should do it.
Expressing expressing a desire.
Calling for it. That's a slippery slope, man. It's like because are you calling to an action? If you all right, so saying, I guess you could say that yelling fire in a crowded theater is the argument that the left. Hold on,
stop. No, we're talking about Brandenburg right now. We're talking about Brandenburg.
Okay,
we're talking about Brandenburg, and the line that's clear there is imminent. The call for the line there that's clear is an imminent lawless call to action, a call to lawless action, and there you need to have proximity. And that's what makes certain differences. So, like if I'm outside the building right now and saying, "You right now go inside there, steal what's going on there," that's when we're talking about incitement. But independent advocacy, yes, even of violent things, you can say we eventually want to take over the United States. We think there should be a violent overthrow of the United States government. You need to have the immediacy. You need to have the proximity. That is what's key to the Brandenburg holding. And so, what you're talking about saying, even yes, I'm calling for a genocide, that is protected speech in this country. And when you say that maybe it's not, or because there's some section in the law that says that, the First Amendment, as is clear, is the supreme law of the land. It's part of the Constitution, regardless of what a state says or what the U.S. law says.
18 U.S.C. 1091, right? The statute criminalizes genocide defined as acts of intended to destroy in whole or part.
That's genocide criminalized.
Let him finish. Pisco, let him finish.
So if you're saying, right, so this is also ties into Trump's executive order, right? So you got the key statutes where the calling for a genocide would fall outside of the First Amendment protection, right? The 18 U.S.C. 1091, right? The genocide statute, USC 2339A and 2339B, material support for terrorism. The material support for terrorism is a big one, right? Solicitation to commit a crime of violence. Now, that's not what you're talking about. Threats, and this is also what you have to conflate.
You're confused, buddy.
I'm not confused. I'm talking. I'm talking.
Let him finish, Pisco.
So providing material support to designated foreign terrorist organizations listed by the State Department, for example, Hamas, is illegal. Material support includes tangible aid, intangible aid like advocacy or propaganda. When coordinated with or directed by the FTO, speech advocating for the FTO's ideology is protected unless it involves direct support or incitement. Holder versus Humanitarian Law Project 2010.
Yep, that's the case. So Holder versus Humanitarian Law Project does not cover independent advocacy. If you read, have you read Holder versus Humanitarian Law Project? Yes or no?
That's what we're saying.
Have you read it? Yes or no? Have you read it? Yes.
No,
have you read?
You
haven't. So it doesn't cover.
Don't do that thing.
No, I didn't.
Let's slow down a little bit. Let's slow down a little bit.
Don't do the thing.
So you haven't read the case. That case does not cover independent advocacy. And furthermore, there's a conceptual problem with what you're doing there, right? You're citing a U.S. statute to define the scope of the First Amendment. Obviously, the First Amendment is going to, surpass the U.S. statutes, because to the extent that a U.S. law conflicts with the First Amendment, that law is invalid. We know that. Okay. We know that the Supreme Court says that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So what Holder versus Humanitarian Law Project told us is it only covered when there's direct communication, when there's a providing of. So that's what material support means. It doesn't cover independent advocacy.
That's why the guy, I'm blanking on his name. That's why the Palestinian kid was held under that statute. Mahmoud Khalil. No. Right? Because
he was not accused of that.
Hold on, go ahead.
You're wrong.
Yeah, because he had the ties to the foreign terrorist organization, and he was working in a coordinate, like, so the difference between what you're saying and what I'm saying is, you saying independent, right? Where it's like you just walk outside, you yourself walk outside and say, I support Hamas. Totally legal, right? When it is a coordinated group effort that is funded or organized by something that, let's say, the Trump administration has reasonable suspicion to believe is tied to an NGO that is in support of a foreign terrorist organization. No. You don't get the First Amendment there. That's exactly what his executive order is about.
Have you read either Mahmoud Khalil's notice to appear or Senator or Secretary of State Marco Rubio's memorandum that establishes his inadmissibility? Have you read either of those two documents?
No, sir.
Okay, so you're not aware actually of the basis for his removal or his reported removal. They're not saying that he's linked to Hamas. I just want to be clear about that. They have not alleged that he is linked to Hamas in any way. The only thing that they've cited is the Secretary of State's designation that his maintaining presence in the United States would be counter to the foreign policy interests of the United States. At no point in any of the official allegations of the government have they said that Mahmoud Khalil is affiliated with, linked with in any way to Hamas. So you agree, as you sit here right now, you do not have any evidence that he's linked to Hamas?
Is Mahmoud Khalil Palestinian?
Do you have evidence that he's linked to Hamas?
It's a simple question. Is he Palestinian?
So I'll answer your question if you answer mine first. Do you have any evidence as you sit here that he's
Yes,
linked
I do.
to
Yes, I do.
Hamas?
And I'm going.
Okay. So what
yes,
is
I
that
do.
evidence actually?
I'm going to. It's in my question. Here's the evidence. Is he Palestinian?
So he's Syrian born, Palestinian of ethnic origin. He lived in Egypt for a time.
Who's the government in Palestine, right? Who's the de facto government of Palestine? Hamas, right? Okay. So there's your connection.
Misfit, no, I have to give me 1 second.
Go ahead, Wick.
Give me 1 second.
I want to let Wick
Misfit.
jump in.
I am an American, right? You understand that?
Yes, sir.
The current government in the United States is MAGA. Do you think that makes me MAGA?
No, the current
No.
government
So why
in the
would you
United
think
States
that
is the United-
being
hold on,
Palestinian makes you Hamas?
If a different country, they designated the United States a foreign terrorist organization, and you were an American in that country, they would hold you to the standard whether you were a Republican or a Democrat.
Do you hold them? Do you hold
no,
Wick
I'm
to be
telling you
MAGA?
what,
Am I MAGA?
Define your standard.
No, are you an American?
I am an American. I'm an American citizen, born and bred.
MAGA is a movement, not a government organization.
MAGA is in control
you
of the
hold
White
to be a
House. They are the ones who Trump is MAGA. Trump is
we
in
only have
control of
one
the
American
Republicans. Well, let's
We
even
only
go
have
the
one American
Republicans.
government.
The Republicans control the
Is he a
White House,
Republican?
correct?
We only have one American government. There's no. You're an American. Right?
I understand.
We're applying your
It doesn't-
standard, sir. We're
No,
applying your
no,
standard.
we're not.
I'm just gonna give a kind reminder about how I feel about interruptions. I understand we're all passionate and heated in the matter of our conversation, but I would like to remind you the audience can't hear much of what you're saying because you're talking over each other.
Gotcha. Okay, you want to go or should I go?
Go ahead.
Okay. Let's try to do this civilly. You sir are an American under one government, right? Whether or not you like the people in charge of the government, you're an American under one government. Mahmoud Khalil, a Palestinian, under one government. That government is Hamas. So he is Palestinian. We have designated Hamas a foreign terrorist organization. He is in protest in support of Hamas against Israel, and that ties him to his own government, to a foreign terrorist organization. That's the connection.
If I
Who
may
controls
respond.
the West Bank?
If I may respond, that is also a good point. But simply because I'm an American does not mean I support my government. Does not mean I support all of its actions. And in fact, I have before protested its actions in several incidences, right? So this idea that him being Palestinian is evidence in any way, shape, or form that he is Hamas is farcical on its face, much like it would be farcical on its face to say that because I'm an American, that I'm MAGA or I'm Republican. In the same vein, it is farcical on its face to say that simply because he is Palestinian means that he is Hamas or connected to Hamas.
Can I
It
add
is
something
just
here?
not true.
Yeah, go ahead, Shawn.
Can I add something here?
One quick thing, then I'll kick it to Shawn.
Yeah.
Again, what you're not understanding is there is one government, but go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, when we talk about Khalil, because now we're getting into, I think, semantics about, American and I'm not MAGA and all this. But when you get into what Mahmoud Khalil was charged under, right, or what he was charged with, Section 237A, the Immigration and Nationality Act, which Pisco brought up, right, allows for the deportation of non-citizens if the Secretary of State determines that their presence or activities in the United States could have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences. We understand that is what Mahmoud Khalil was arrested. That was the statute. That's what they're saying he violated and why he was detained and had his visa revoked. His activities in the United States, meaning the riots that he organized at Columbia University, the literature that his protest was filled with, that he was caught with, right, that he was distributing, said death to America and was in favor. His activities and his protests were in favor of an FTO. Those activities in the United States are providing by law material support by means of advocacy to a foreign terrorist organization. Those activities in the United States are counter to the best interest or the current interests of U.S. foreign policy. If you don't want to have this happen to you, and you're a foreign student here studying, don't break the law. Don't call for the death of a country that is giving you the right to study within that country. He could very well have avoided that.
What law did Ozturk break?
Very quickly, Misfit Patriot. Who controls the West Bank?
I mean, again, it doesn't matter who controls it.
Who controls?
Why are we going back to that? That's a silly thing.
No, because so this is why we're going back to it.
You're strawmanning.
Excuse me. This is why we're going back to it, because you made an allegation.
Because you don't want to answer the question I asked you.
Excuse me. No. So we know you said, for example, and for the purpose of the material support, it actually plays into what you're saying as well, because material support actually does require for some kind of communication between the two parties. That's what's necessary for material support. And so you're saying that he is saying speech in favor of genocide, even if it were true. There are no allegations to that effect. I just want to be clear. None of you have read the notice to appear. None of you have read Marco Rubio's declaration that is attached in the basis of his removal. And so none of those things that you just said, Shawn, about him being caught with pamphlets that calling for the death of America, that's a fucking lie. There are no official allegations to that effect. There's no allegation whatsoever that he made a statement in favor of Hamas. So all of that is bullshit, just to be clear. But you made a different statement, Mr. Patriot. You said, we know he's affiliated with Hamas. And the reason we know he's affiliated with Hamas is because he's a Palestinian. And of course, Palestinians are under one government. And so my question for you, Mr. Patriot, is very clear. Who controls the West Bank?
The West Bank is under Israeli control.
So what is the Palestinian government in charge of the West Bank?
Hamas. I mean, it's Palestinians. No. You're talking about control, right? Like they have invaded that little area. But if you are Palestinian, your government is Hamas. So if Israel has taken over and you're still a Palestinian, your government is not Israel, is the Israeli government. Do you understand?
Have you heard of the Palestinian Authority before? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, the PLO. Look, 1 sec.
No, not the PLO.
The Palestinian Authority.
I'm asking if you've heard of it before.
Yes.
Okay, you know that's controlled by Fatah, right? And not Hamas. You know that that Fatah and Hamas are enemies. You know that, right?
Yeah, and they got their own little president, but it's really,
So you agree, therefore, you agree that all Palestinians, even if this were a standard that could be applied, Whick already dumpstered your standard. But even if this were a standard, even if there were a standard to be applied, that you are the beliefs of your country, and that not necessarily affiliates you in the way that the material support demands, even if that were the standard, it's a stupid fucking standard. But even if it were, you agree, therefore, that not all people of Palestinian heritage live under Hamas. You agree with that? Yes, correct?
Sure, you asked a question. You asked a question I can answer now, right? So you said, what's the connection for Mahmoud Khalil to Hamas? Okay.
Yes, answer.
It's the fucking protest where he's supporting Hamas. That's the thing. There, you have a Palestinian who is under a Palestinian government that is a foreign terrorist organization at a protest calling for the death to Israel. In chanting from the river to the sea, like Shawn said, you want to say the pamphlets? There's no evidence of the pamphlets. I don't know. Then why did they find them? Right? Like so. But either way, you don't need hardcore evidence for this. You need common fucking sense. The kid is Palestinian. Hamas's government is a foreign terrorist organization. He's in America at a protest supporting the foreign terrorist organization.
Can you name?
This doesn't need to be complicated.
Can you name one statement that he has made in support of Hamas that he himself said?
How about just being at the fucking protest? Why do you?
He organized the protest.
So the people who were at the January 6th protests are going to be responsible for everything everyone at the January 6th protest did?
They were.
The organizers were held accountable. And by the way,
not the organizers.
Go ahead. Shawn hasn't talked in a while. Go ahead, Shawn.
As somebody who has organized protests in the past, and I did this on Long Island when I lived in New York, we had tens of thousands of people came out. I understood that every single protest that I organized, I was on the hook for. Period. End of story. Okay. And I made sure that, okay, you could laugh, but you've never done it. Okay. Yeah. You could laugh and you can cuss and you can use colorful language, or you could sit down, you could shut up and you can let me finish. That's your decision. Okay. As somebody who has done this in the past, I understood that anything that happened at a protest or a function that I organized that had 10,000 people at it, okay, would ultimately come back at me. And I had elected officials in the state of New York that had come at me and called me a terrorist for activities that happened or that they said happened at my protest, which never happened. Okay. Had they, and I took immense precaution to make sure that the people who came to my protests behaved themselves under full assumption that if they didn't, I was going to be held accountable. If you organize something and it gets out of hand and you are the organizer of that protest and it gets out of hand, yes, you absolutely should and can be held accountable.
Should Trump be held personally responsible for January 6th? Should Trump be
No,
held personally
because he
responsible?
said peacefully and patriotically. He outlined it and he described it. He described what he wanted to do.
Did he or did he not organize the protest?
He did not organize that protest.
So Donald Trump.
There was different organizers. Different organizers.
So you're shitting me right now. So do you have any evidence that Mahmoud Khalil personally organized the protest?
I mean, I assume based on the reports.
Is the answer no?
I assume based on the reports because the reports are that he was the organizer. Do you have any evidence that he didn't?
We don't need evidence that he didn't.
I don't need evidence.
You need evidence that he did.
There are no allegations. There are no allegations in the notice to appear, which is the charging document. When I say notice to appear, don't get confused. That's the charging document that I'm referring to. That would be the equivalent of an indictment in the context of a criminal case. And
what was he charged with?
The Rubio statement, he wasn't charged with anything. That's not. This is.
You just called it a charging document. Now it's not a charging document.
I said it's
so why don't we stick to terms, bud?
He's being alleged to be removable under the basis of the INA of the Secretary of State's determinations. But the key component here is what all you guys are saying. That's not in the allegation. So why should I assume that he's the mastermind behind the organization because of his mere presence? What you said, by the way, and you're diluting what you said, and we caught on to it, and we're not fucking stupid. We track what you're saying. Is his mere presence in the protest is enough for him to be affiliated with Hamas? So that's not your standard, right? So what's the standard for being affiliated with Hamas? Actually,
my standard with being affiliated with Hamas is claiming to be Hamas. I never said that Mahmoud Khalil claimed to be a member of Hamas. I said he was providing material support. Whoa. I said he was providing material support in the form of advocacy, okay, in the public eye for Hamas.
So advocacy, this is the problem, right? What they're doing is they're equating when they're not supposed to, right? The Supreme Court has been clear in Holder versus Humanitarian Law Project that mere advocacy is not material support. But when it grounds down into it, right? Even though, as Whick pointed out, they can point to no statement in support of Hamas. They can point to no specific statement by Mahmoud Khalil at all. But even though they can't point to a specific statement, all they're trying to do is ground out and say, because of mere advocacy, that equates to material support for Hamas. And I want to stress again, they can point to no statement from Mahmoud Khalil that would even be express advocacy, by the way, which is protected. Even if Mahmoud Khalil said, I support Hamas, that's protected speech in this country.
And I just want to piggyback on that. I want to piggyback on that because Mahmoud Khalil is one of many that have been targeted. Let's talk about Rumesia Öztürk. I'm butchering the name. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. Öztürk. What crime did she commit?
Is that the one that published
an op-ed that was critical of Israel?
Op-ed
Yes, that's the one.
Critical of Israel. Yeah, I haven't read the details on the case, so I'm not going to try to opine on it. So
I will educate you. And this is good for the audience,
opinion,
right? I don't mean to be rude here, right? I'm just, you don't know, so let me give you those details right now. She wrote a pro-Palestinian op-ed in a student newspaper, and because of that, she was detained for weeks. She eventually won her case and has been released from detainment. But this is a pattern of behavior that the Trump administration, and goes back to my opening argument, of a pattern of behavior that he engages in, and his administration has engaged in, not just in onesies and twosies, but over and over and over again across the board. It's not just Öztürk, right? It's Ranjani Srinivasan. Oh my God, these names. Ranjani, okay? Dr. Rasha Alaway has also, right? In fact, people who have tried to self-deport. There's this, it was an Ersalik versus Hyde. Okay, the dude tried to self-deport. He booked a flight to leave the country because he didn't want to be here anymore. He knew ICE was after him, etc. But ICE grabbed him because they wanted to punish it. They kept him from self-deporting. They kept him from leaving because they're trying to punish them for their free speech, for his speech, for his advocacy. Mr. Farash, I want to ask you directly, because you said directly that though immigrants who are here shouldn't break the law. What law did Öztürk break?
What lauded Osterbrook? Can you give me a summary of again what happened?
She wrote a pro-Palestinian op-ed in a student newspaper criticizing Trump's response to Israel's actions in Gaza. Her visa was revoked.
But I bet that's not all it said. I think we're going to have to go through word for word what it said to get to the.
So hold on. Instead of
I can't read it right now, so I can't answer that question because I can't read it right now.
Let's just say this. Okay, let's say you said that she went through the due process and won her case, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the problem?
That she was detained for weeks and they was targeted. Okay, simply because someone
understood.
Okay, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, sir. If I come and I start shooting at you, does it matter if I miss? Does that make you feel better?
Yeah, that's a bad analogy. But
why?
Look, here's the deal. Because it's not like the Trump administration shot at her and missed.
They detained her for weeks.
They had so look, here's how things work. Okay, the justice system is not perfect. Okay, it's not perfect and it's never going to be perfect. This doesn't apply just to them. It applies to everything. All right. Look, I've been in court before. And I have been in front of a jury and the jury has said not guilty, right? So is it some type of injustice against me that I was arrested, detained, had to go through an entire trial only to find out that I'm not guilty? I mean,
if the person accusing you was specifically lying to try to get you to go through that process, yes.
If the police, the federal government, or anybody that's arresting you, if they have reasonable suspicion to arrest you, then they arrest you. And then you go through due process. And if you are innocent, you in most cases get let go. So let's just jump right back to real quick one point, because I want to touch back on this before we forget about it. You said that there is no evidence that Mahmoud Khalil organized the event, right? The U.S. government through a 2-page memo.
I was asking you. No. Don't be sneaky. I asked you for evidence. Do you have evidence of it?
Let him finish.
Well,
the question.
I needed to refresh my memory, so I just looked it up real quick. Okay, so there was a 2-page memo signed by Marco Rubio alleging he was a key figure, right? And in organizing the protest through the Columbia University Apartheid Divest, CUAD, and the Gaza Solidarity Encampment in April of 2024. Okay, Caroline Levitt came out and said he organized it. Now look, this is what I'm saying. You want the evidence, right? All I'm saying is maybe, just maybe, they had enough reasonable suspicion, and now he can go through due process. And just like that other lady, if he didn't do anything, then he goes through the due process and he clears his name. I don't understand what the big problem is with you people saying nobody should be arrested, nobody should be detained, even if there's a suspicion that they are working with a foreign terrorist organization.
Okay,
right? We should just not protect the country.
Let's be clear about what we're talking about here. You guys are crying about quote unquote fake pressure, Twitter files, bullshit, stuff that the Biden administration didn't even do, or things that don't even implicate the First Amendment with respect to private actors or university campuses that are canceling people that have nothing to do with the Biden administration.
Twitter files?
By the way, wait, Twitter files relate to conduct that starts when? When Trump was in
office,
right?
Not when it started. When it was
actively
going on.
So when the New York Post story about the Hunter Biden laptop occurred, whose presidency did that occur under?
Again, during the Biden administration.
Answer the question. Whose presidency did that occur under?
Bro, if you do the thing,
can you answer the question, please?
If you do the thing again where you go da 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 da, I'm gonna lose my shit. Let's try to keep this respectful.
I don't give a fuck.
Ask me a question one time.
Whose presidency? It was a very clear question. Under whose presidency did the censoring of the New York Post Hunter Biden laptop story occur under?
Donald Trump's.
Okay, so very clear. And by the way, those are issues that do not even implicate the actual government conduct that occurred in
Pisco?
that case. There's no evidence that in fact the progenitor of the Twitter files
this is silly.
That there was no pressure. Said that there was no pressure. And in fact, there's been some of these Twitter file cases, one of which has gone to the Supreme Court, where they said absolutely no First Amendment issues here, no First Amendment issues here. And so you guys are crying about the biggest nothing burger that ever existed, have nothing to do with the First Amendment. And when someone is detained for weeks, you say harmless error. Oh, they wrote an op-ed. They were detained for a few weeks. Who gives a fuck? They would have been detained longer if it weren't for a single district court. And by the way, they're going to keep trying to keep her in prison. And Mahmoud Khalil is still rotting in a dungeon right now as we speak.
Are you done?
I am gonna let me just first of all, there was a blatant false equivalence there when you talk about who the Twitter file started under. Yes, Pisco, you're right. It started under Donald Trump. No, it was not in Donald Trump's best interest to push that censorship. Okay. So if we're going to say that Donald Trump is pro censorship because that happened under him, that's ridiculous. It cost him the election. Okay. So that's definitely not something that he orchestrated. However, in 2022, when the Twitter files had been released, okay, and you had the 2022 midterms, and there were talks about Russian interference again, and the main source of that interference was conversation surrounding Hunter Biden's laptop that was orchestrated by the Biden DOJ, by Merrick Garland, and maybe Joe Biden, maybe not, because he was president AutoPen. Next, okay? Next, you want to know about how Mahmoud Khalil was linked to Hamas? I'm sharing an image into backstage. This is a pamphlet that he was distributing at his protest.
Can you show us a picture of him distributing it?
No evidence.
With
no
the
evidence
logo. It was absolutely.
Can you show us a picture of him distributing it?
Do
you
you expect to have people taking pictures of every pamphlet that's out there? Yes, they found this at his protest.
Do you have testimony? Do you have testimony of anyone saying that he himself was distributing it?
Do you have evidence that he distributed it?
See that how triggered he is?
So
now there's a logo of Hamas there with Hamas media office.
He distributed it.
Was that his protest?
What Pisco is saying is, if you do not have a smoking gun, you have no right to ever arrest anybody. If you only have circumstantial evidence, if you only have reports from Marco Rubio saying that he was an organizer for CUAD, if you have him at the protest, if you have him supporting Hamas openly, if you have him organizing, if you have this and this and this and this, but if you don't have a video of him handing out a pamphlet, you can't arrest him.
You don't
Do you have testimony from anybody? Wait. Do you have testimony from anybody? Do you have a photo? Is anyone saying that he distributed this leaflet? Do you have any evidence that he knew about this pamphlet? Do you have any evidence that he was in an area where this pamphlet was being distributed generally? Is there evidence of this pamphlet being distributed in his general vicinity? Do you have anything that links him to this pamphlet specifically?
Yeah, him organizing the fucking protest.
What do you mean he organized?
I'm going to lose my mind.
I just told you how many times we got to do this. He was associated with the Columbia University Apartheid Defense and Gaza Solidarity Encampment. So he was clearly an organizer.
So to be clear, this is the guilt by association that these people want to put you in because you're a part of the protest. Just because you're associated.
I'm not here on a visa, dude.
I want to be clear. Just because you're associated with anybody in this protest, right? If you have that mere connection, they're going to say that you're a Hamas supporter. They're going to link you to this pamphlet.
And I fucking hope they do.
Crazy.
I fucking hope they do.
And yet you're crying about the Jan Sixers. You're crying about the Jan Sixers. And you said, by the way, they didn't have their due process rights, all of whom had access to trials, all of whom had access if they wanted to cross-examine their witnesses.
The right to a fair trial is the linchpin of due process.
And
do you believe, Pisco?
Excuse me. I thought I was talking.
Yeah, well, we know you're doing a whole hell of a lot of that.
Yeah. I thought I was talking.
Really fast. Don't let anybody else.
So to be 100% clear, your standard is anyone who's affiliated with these protests can be fucking marked with this pamphlet and be considered affiliated with Hamas for purposes of the material support provision of the Holdovers Humanitarian Law Project.
That's not my standard.
Ridiculous.
That's not my standard. You say that's my standard. You could say that. You could say I'm the Queen of Greenland too, but that's not true either. I will point to this. Okay, you mentioned we talked about J6ers and their due process rights being violated. The right to a fair trial is one of the linchpins of the process. Pisco, clearly you're not on my side of politics. That's okay. I have no problem with that. If I told you that you had to stand trial in West Virginia, okay, a place that voted 95% for Trump, a district that voted 95% for Trump, not the whole state, but a district, a jurisdiction, because they are tying you to some bank robbery that you're swearing you didn't commit. Do you think that would be fair?
What do you mean by fair? It's unnecessary under the Constitution.
What do I mean by fair? I mean, you are going to be sitting in front of a jury.
You're asking me a question, right?
That doesn't like you.
Let him answer.
The Constitution has a venue provision. That venue provision is not voluntary. You have to follow it, all right? So the venue provision in the Constitution states that you have to be, have the trial in the place where the crime was committed. We should follow the Constitution, shouldn't we?
We absolutely should. But when you can raise a claim that the jury pool is going to be composed of people who are going to convict you before they sit in the seat. And by the way, there were jurors in the cases of these January 6th defendants who said they didn't even care about the trial. They were ready to convict. There were lines out the door for jury selection in Washington, D.C. because they wanted to send these people to jail. That's not fair. You could agree that's not fair.
Chamberlain No, absolutely not. Every one of these defendants had plenty of procedure, plenty of due process.
You think so?
They had more. Yeah, they were treated. Not only were they treated more than fairly, they were treated far too leniently. They were undercharged, many of these people, and these people, these terrorist scum, are free now because of your buddy in the Oval Office.
This is great.
Just to be 100% clear. Just to be 100% clear.
One of the charges that they were thrown at was ruled inappropriate. Pisco 1512, dude.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is the Fisher case, and that case, amounts to a smaller group of individuals. But those people did have due process rights, and
no, they didn't. They were charged inappropriately under a statute that didn't apply.
So 100%, they did have due process rights, just as you said. By the way,
they didn't.
By the way, you're saying it's harmless error for some of these people to be like in prison for weeks and weeks on end. I don't know how you can maintain that posture and say, well, because the Supreme Court has some, I have to say, a very, I think, out there ruling in the Fisher case. The people who were charged under that theory, many of them were recharged. Many of them had specific. Wait, let me finish. Many of them had specific. Excuse me. So many of them had specific links to the actual document nexus.
Bro, he's filler busting.
I will. Hold on. Stop,
I'm
gentlemen. Hold on.
God.
Listen, stop. Pisco, I will be agreeable to the idea that you have eaten up a lot of the mic time. So I ask that you be more intentional with your words. I'm just saying we could go back in time, and I'm just saying, I understand you have a lot to get
through. If they raise Fisher and say that's a denial of due process, I have to explain why that's bullshit. These people absolutely did have their day in court, and the proof is in the pudding, right? Like, these individuals, many of them were charged with multiple crimes, not just the Fisher theory of obstruction of official proceeding. And put that to the side, right? What we're talking about here is whether or not you can say everyone in January 6th is guilty of the worst acts because of their mere presence in January 6th. The answer to that is obviously no.
Obviously not. I wouldn't have that standard if I may.
We're not charging all these individuals with seditious conspiracy.
Maybe I can get us back a little on track, because yes, I would never accept that. I think that simply your presence at the January 6th should not have been enough to put you in any sort of legal jeopardy whatsoever. And if it was, and to the extent it was a failure, right? It was a failure. Now, that said, Pisco knows much more about that than I do, but let's, again, reground it to what we're actually talking about today and the threats to free speech that we are facing from the Trump administration. Again, you can point to the Twitter files, you can point to censorship, and I won't defend any of that. Fair enough. I sat and argued against many leftists for years about their tendency to cancel, to deplatform. The free speech is something I've stood up for my entire YouTubing career, right? And I have a record that can show that, and I am proud of it. But when I see the same people who were cheering me on just a year ago when I was saying, hey, Biden, you really shouldn't put pressure like that on people that's probably going to infringe with their free speech rights. When I see those same people, now that the boot, they're wearing the boot, joyfully give up all their principles and start doxing people they don't like, sending pictures, death threats, all these types of things, engaging in they're weaponizing the FCC, and they have the charges that were dropped by the Biden administration against CBS, NBC, Fox News, etc. Everyone but Fox News, the new FCC has rebrought. Again, they're weaponizing the institutions of America to target the free speech of Americans that they do not like. That is the reason. Again, You can argue, if I may finish just real quick, you can argue that, well, the president has a power to do these things, or the FCC has a power to do these things, but if they use power that they have in a way to target people's speech, it is violating their First Amendment right, and it is violating their free speech as well.
Can we talk now? Look, here's the deal. Just a really quick pause, and I'm not trying to take moderator, duties away from Ragin, because she's doing great. But there's on the other side of this panel, it seems like there's a debate strategy of talking really, really fast and not letting the other person get a word in. And if you just keep on talking and you don't stop and you do then we can't
stop
talk.
crying. Just get to it, bro.
Hold on.
That is rich.
This is the problem. All right. You're trying to basically like filibuster and flood the zone with information, so we can't argue any of your points because you made 89 points. And secondly, right, just ask a fucking question and then we will answer it. Okay. And you see how I'm talking right now? I can talk really, really fast, just like you, but just make it an articulated argument and stay on point. I'm sorry, Ragin. I didn't mean to take that away from you, but it's been annoying. All right. So now the FCC is what we will get back to. You say the FCC under Trump is he's weaponized the FCC. Can you provide me of an example, a specific example, please?
Oh, yeah.
Of how Donald Trump has weaponized the FCC, and then I will rebuttal or Shawn will.
Okay, so do you know who the chairman currently of the FCC is? Brendan Carr.
Brendan Carr.
Are you familiar with him?
Carr.
Yes, excellent. So he launched on January 22nd, 2025, an investigation. He reopened an investigation into CBS's 60 Minutes for allegedly distorting a Kamala Harris interview during the 2024 election campaign, an inquiry previously dismissed under Carr's predecessor. Carr also reinstated complaints against ABC and NBC for their election coverage. Again, this is all obviously retributive. It's obviously a retaliation for their stances.
Do you deny that it's retributive?
Why is it obvious, Whick?
Yeah.
What makes it obvious?
So what Brendan Carr will do, and what Trump will do, is they will complain publicly about, like, hey, this isn't fair. Someone should look into this. And then magically, the FCC is opening investigations into them. Do you think that's
usually what the chairman of the FCC has the power to do, though?
Yeah.
If he wants to investigate something, he can do it. What makes it obvious that this is retributive, as you mentioned?
Can you name one company or news organization that hasn't been critical of Trump that the FCC, the current FCC, has opened an investigation into?
That hasn't been critical
Yes.
of Trump, that the FCC has opened.
That's a weird thing to say, because every organization is critical of Trump. So yeah, anybody he investigates is going to have evidence.
I've seen
Oh my
Fox
God,
News
wait.
be critical of Trump. I've seen Newsmax be critical of Trump. I know people at One American News that have been critical of Trump on air. I don't think that's fair. Number two, what again makes it obvious that this is retributive and not legitimate?
So he's saying outwardly it's political. It's because the coverage of Kamala Harris, they were going light on her because of how they edited it. He does the same thing, by the way, with the pollsters. It's a course of conduct, a pattern of conduct where people who he politically disagrees with, or who paint Kamala, in his view, in a better light or a disfavorable light, a favorable light versus his disfavorable light, he's going to go after them. Okay. It's a course of conduct that's obvious, and he's openly stating it's because of the coverage related to Kamala Harris.
Yeah, but let's just tie this on a bow. Is it under Brendan Carr's purview to do this?
It's absolutely under the executive branch's purview to investigate matters.
So
wait, let me finish. Wait, excuse me. I thought that there was like a strict interruption rule here, right? Yeah. So it's absolutely within their purview to run investigations. Just like, by the way, it's under the purview of the Department of Justice to run criminal investigations. Just because it's technically within their authority to do something doesn't mean A, it's not also a First Amendment violation, or B, that it's not an abuse of authority. In order to abuse an authority, you have to have an authority. So your response that, well, can he technically do investigations? Of course he can. That's the whole fucking point of this.
Okay.
Why is that an abuse of their authority, though? When you have an interview when you have Kamala Harris in that 60 Minutes interview, and you got one answer that was swapped out for a better answer, how is that not journalistic malpractice?
Because
is it
hold on, if I
is
can I answer this one?
Is it First Amendment protected speech? Is it First Amendment protected speech to edit things, even assuming your version of edits, edit things in the way that you want?
Okay, my question
is that First Amendment protected? Yes,
Wait,
or is
hold
that
on,
First
I
Amendment
think-
protected? Yes or no?
I think
I'm
Whick
not
also
asking whether or
wanted
not
to-
this is a violation of the First Amendment, but I'm
asking you.
I didn't ask that. You asked me a question that was irrelevant.
Hold on. I think Whick wanted to dive into that answer as
Do
well.
you know what editorial discretion is?
Yes.
Okay, editorial discretion is the discretion of the organization or a person to edit things in the way that they like. That is a protected speech, correct?
Sure.
Yeah. Yes. Editorial discretion. Yes.
If, again, if a company decides to edit things in a way that is favorable or disfavorable to someone, is that protected speech? Can they do that?
It is protected. It is protected, but I'm going to counter this, Whick, with this. They released the original answer, to the public, and then they swapped it out for a better answer.
Is that protected
Wait,
speech? Yes or no?
Is that protected?
That may be protected speech, but I will say that is journalistic malpractice.
It may be
Whether it
that's
is or
the
not,
case, but the
is
FCC
it protected?
cannot violate someone's first
Okay.
protected speech, even if they're bad
Wait, do you
journalists.
agree
They
with that?
cannot
Wait,
do
let's
that.
get
And the fact that
conclusion
Trump,
here. We're
hold,
not
can I
gonna move
finish?
on.
Please go. The fact that
Hey, you're interrupting your own teammate, dude.
The fact that they continuously try to do this, the Trump administration, and let's be clear, Brendan Carr knows this is wrong because he in the past has come out against the FCC trying to do this with other organizations. So he knows that this is incorrect. He has fought against this before, right? And he today has done a heel turn and become this bizarro version of himself and said that, oh, well, now that we have power, we're going to do it. And again, you recognize and you've admitted that this is protected speech, that editorial discretion is something that they cannot force you. The government cannot force you to edit a thing in a way that is favorable or disfavorable to them.
Okay,
and again, you must recognize that this is something that Trump has, in Trump's administration, Brendan Carr has done specifically. Do you at least recognize that that's true?
I'm sorry. I
lost the original question.
You guys, like, this is the fucking problem with this debate. You guys go on 6-minute fucking tangents.
That wasn't 6 minutes. That was 30 seconds.
Dude, I'm just saying. It's clear that there's a disproportionate time over there, right?
I think it would be more helpful if we try to line item things out. Start with A, B, and then C. I think what's happening is we're pairing everything all into one. Maybe make a claim and then maybe provide a brief elaboration.
I'll go real quick. Yes or no questions. Okay. One, is editorial discretion protected speech?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. When they edited that interview, was that under their editorial discretion?
I don't know. I don't know the facts of it. Okay. I believe so.
Okay. Assuming it was. 3. Trump's FCC deciding to bring suit against them for their editorial discretion, does that threaten their First Amendment protected speech? Yes or no?
No, I don't think so. No. And do you have any evidence other than you think so that this is retaliatory?
Yes, he's saying that it's because of how they edited it. You just accepted that there's First Amendment interest involved in editorial discretion. You accepted that, correct?
Yeah, but I'm saying, Brandon Carr, is it under Brandon Carr's purview? Is it under Brandon Carr's purview? And you said, you agreed. You said yes.
Can Carr violate the First Amendment?
No, I don't think anyone can.
Of course not. So whether or not the general subject, that is to say, whether, communications to the public or using the airwaves, whether that's generally within his purview to investigate, it doesn't matter. He can't violate the First Amendment. You granted that there's First Amendment interest in the editorial, right? In editing how you're going to do stuff.
Yeah, no,
and so the question was posed to you. Hang on. You agree that editing, that's part of First Amendment protected values, correct?
I said I don't know, but I assume so. If he has information where he can
open up an investigation. Has a news distortion rule. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I know what
it doesn't matter. So we're asking.
Do you know what the news distortion rule is?
So we're asking very simple questions related to the First Amendment, and that question.
Okay, this has everything to do with that. Do you know what the news distortion rule is, Pisco?
Whatever the FCC news distortion.
Do you know the news distortion rule is, Pisco?
Yeah. So I'm not aware of the FCC. What is it? I'm not aware. Wait, I just told you I'm not aware of the specifics of the FCC news distortion rule. It does not.
Okay, I'll tell you what it is. I'll educate you. The news distortion rule prohibits knowingly broadcasting false information or manipulating interviews deceptively. Would you agree that swapping one answer for the other answer and making it look like she answered that the first way isn't deceptive?
No.
You don't think that's deceptive? Passing that off as if that's how she answered the question in real time, that's not deceptive.
So no, to be clear, I do not think that merely editing out something else would necessarily be deceptive, but I just want to be clear. Whatever rule the FCC imposes cannot conflict with the First Amendment. Do you agree?
No, this is not true because this is a public airwave. This is public airwave. CBS is public.
Can the government censor public airwaves?
Can it violate the First Amendment? I'll ask you.
It's not censoring. It's investigating.
It absolutely is censorship.
They didn't censor it.
It absolutely is censorship. If you are being punished for your speech and editorial discretion, it is a form of censorship.
No. That is not censorship. Censoring it would be deplatforming the interview and making sure you couldn't find it. I could find it. It's not censored. Everyone watched it. Nobody censored the interview.
Can the FCC violate the First Amendment? Can the FCC violate the First Amendment?
You're asking me a question.
Broadcast TV and radio stations must adhere to certain public interest obligations because they use public airwaves. It is against the public It is against the public interest to deceptively put forth an interview or to run an interview where we know how she answered the question the first time, to remove that and make it look like she answered it differently. That is deception. It's bait and switch.
So when Fox News deceptively edits different clips of different individuals.
What about it? What about it?
I thought there was no interruptions. Wait, I thought there was no interruptions.
I'm not interrupting. I'm not interrupting.
I thought there was no interruptions.
No, but you jump in right after Shawn says something, and I don't get to fucking
hold on. I am
my God.
agreeable because
This is
Misfit
insane.
already was trying to say something when Shawn interrupted him. So it is back to Misfit, and then
Okay.
we'll go to Pisco.
Do we need to start? Do we really need to start raising fucking hands? Not you,
I
Sarah.
I might actually go
Okay,
into a
look.
time session if we need to,
we might have
gentlemen.
to.
You
I
can
have
do
a fucking
this.
thing right here. I could start clicking it every time Pisco opens his fucking mouth. Sorry,
Bro,
All right, look,
fucking
shut up.
get to it.
Shut up.
Stop being a pussy.
So did the FCC censor, or did they open investigation into something that was already aired? Because what happened was Brendan Carr was appointed and then investigated something that Shawn says that they claim violated the Editing Act, right? So what I'm trying to say is you're asking me a question that is completely unrelated to the topic. Like, can they do it? Yes, you can edit it, and you also can be investigated for it, and it's under Brendan Carr's purview, and it's not retaliation if you fucking see something and you go, hey, we should look into that. This is the exact same argument you guys have with Mahmoud Khalil. They have evidence that they need to investigate someone. Then they arrest them. Then they do something. Then they make an action. If everything was on the up and up and everything was fucking legit, then obviously the person who did nothing wrong will be fucking fine. Apparently what you fucking people have a problem with is literally looking into shit. And I find that fucking hilarious because you arrested Donald Trump based off of fucking impeached him twice.
Irrelevant.
Right? I'm
So
just
irrelevant.
saying it's
I want to
hilarious.
address this. Do we address this super chat, Zach?
Yo,
This FCC news distortion rule specifically excludes cable news networks. CBS is not a cable news network.
Okay.
Just want to put that out there.
Isn't it the cable broadcasting system? Is that what it stands for?
No.
maybe
CBS is not. CBS is not a cable channel. You can get it over the air. It's public. You can get it. You can stick an antenna out your window and get it. CBS.
Guys, who the fuck cares, right? So what we're talking about right now.
How are you going to get to who cares? This rule literally proves that you're
I thought
wrong.
It was my turn. So
ahead,
I thought it was my
Pisco.
turn. Isn't it my
Go
turn?
ahead,
Okay, cool.
yes.
So
Hold on,
the
let me
First
do this
Amendment
real
interest
quick.
the First Amendment interest that we're talking about here, it doesn't matter whether or not a rule from the FCC, which is a statutorily constructed agency, whether or not that rule says something or that there's some interpretation by the head of an agency to some effect that would purport to give some discretion to investigate this matter. If it violates the First Amendment, the First Amendment can't be superseded by an agency's regulation or by a statute of Congress. So if the President of the United States is directing, quote, at deceptive edits, which is just, by the way, it's translation for edits that he thinks hurt him, all right? He's not going after this for the public interest of getting rid of deceptive edits or cuts. Are you fucking kidding me? Think about all the deceptive edits or the deceptive cuts that Trump media or Trump himself promotes all the time. What he's doing is retaliating against editorial discretion that he doesn't agree with, that is sort of against him or that he interprets to be against him politically. The same thing, by the way, as the pollster out of Iowa.
And
Why is he
Seltzer,
going
yep.
after that pollster? Yeah, not because of its methodology, not because the pollster was wrong, but because the pollster in his mind was opposed to him. And you guys are coping, pretend that there's some legitimacy to this investigation or this lawsuit, and when really it's obvious retaliation on First Amendment protected grounds, which you've already conceded, and it therefore is a huge threat to all these broadcasters, and they're interpreting it as such, and so are the First Amendment independent advocacy groups like FIRE.
I want to ask.
Hold on. One minute and 27 seconds.
Do you breathe? I
breathe, but
You did-
it is
so hold on.
absolutely
You understand
it's
how-
absolutely outrageous.
Now he's going on again. I think we should just let him run the whole show.
Yeah, no, I'll start it up. No, keep going, bro. You keep.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
Dude,
Look, you have
guys just
when
cry
you're
about
talking
the
when
procedure.
you
Have
look
the
at
conversation. The meta
okay,
shit is
Pisco, let me
super
ask you a
boring.
question. I'm gonna ask you another question.
Hold on.
I'm gonna ask you another question. Serious question.
Yo, the meta is so boring. Trust me.
FCC.
I think the point is that there's too many points in one take,
Thank
right?
you.
And so
It's
what's
fucking
what's
insane.
happening is the information is getting scrambled across, and so then when it's time for them to answer back or respond to it, they're having a hard time trying to keep up because it's like point 1 through 30, and then their response they give you an
Sarah,
answer. Hold on,
Misfit
hold on,
Patriot was-
hold on,
Oh
hold
my
on. I'm
God.
just
Interrupting
saying,
the moderator is a
This is
great idea.
insane.
that is dangerous territory in these
This
crowds.
is
But
insane.
Great
but
idea.
I just want to say, if they're trying to respond to maybe point number 7, and then you immediately come back, so then now 10 through 20 aren't being answered or responded to, and then we're
Yeah.
being counterproductive.
I want to address what you're saying. So I'm addressing what you're saying.
Hold on.
Not
Start
only
his-
is this meta discussion really super duper boring, and the meta in general boring, and the state of the moderation super boring, the problem is they're not responding to things. So when we, for example,
They
when we say
can't.
first,
They can't.
Thank you.
so they absolutely can. And when they're going off into the woods about the Trump indictments, for example, that has nothing to do with what we're here to talk about. And so who's bringing up things that are immaterial? Everything that Whick and I have said have been about the same, in this entire segment, the same exact thing, which is this is political retaliation and offering evidence. So when I go into this tirade, it'll last a minute, fucking cool your jets. It's all about evidence bolstering the notion that the purpose behind the FCC regulation or the FCC action is retaliation. It's all about the same thing, Sarah. It's not anything different.
I'm not disputing whether the information is vital. However, when we need to go, we just need to run a line of logic and go point by point and allow them to
I think you need to
respond.
run a line of ketamine into this motherfucker. Like
Oh, goodness.
just fucking shit.
I'll
man.
ask a really
Pisco,
simple
I
question.
want to
This is all
make sure
pure
I
code.
clarify.
It's
I
all
want to
pure
make sure I
code. No, no.
clarify.
I
I
got
it. It's all code.
appreciate. I have a very large appreciation for the amount of knowledge you have, right? And the ability to bring this to the table and have so many arguments available. However, I do want to add that in order for us to really be productive, it's more helpful to go one line item at a time.
Okay,
All right, so
okay,
I want
real
to
simple-
ask about the specific item of deception, right? This news distortion rule, which public broadcasters have to abide by. Okay, deception. And let's compare that to you bought a vehicle, right? You bought a car. You just walked out of the dealership thinking you bought a 2025 Chevy Silverado, and you go back to the dealership to pick it up, and it's a 2023 Chevy Silverado. Is that deceptive?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So good. So when you get Kamala's answer to the Israel Middle East question, and it's one thing, and then you watch the interview, okay, you come back a few days later, watching it, and it's another thing, is that deceptive?
Not necessarily, and I'll tell you why, and I'll explain the difference here, right? Editing is a matter of subjective choice, and who decides what information is objective versus subjective versus deceptive versus not. Let me ask you this, and I have 2 questions for you. I'll be very quick. The first one, to get to Pisco's point on the First Amendment, do you if New York, or let's say Biden had won the election and Biden passed a federal statute through Congress, through legislation, all above board, that said, we're going to take everyone's guns. Can he do that? Is that legal?
No,
Okay, why not? He passed a statute.
because it's a violation of the Second Amendment.
Exactly. So
Constitutional
when the FCC has a law that violates the First Amendment, is that legal?
But
It does not violate the
It
First
does
Amendment.
violate the First Amendment. It
No,
is
it does
protected
not.
speech, and I'll explain
doesn't.
why. So again, the question of misinformation or any of these things, right? And the reason it's so dangerous to give the power to the government to decide what is misinformation and what is not is who is in charge and who gets to decide what actual misinformation is. So let me ask you, Mr. Farash, who do you want deciding what you can and cannot say? Pick your
Me.
daddy. Who's your speech
I
daddy?
want to be able to decide what I can and cannot
Okay,
say.
so if you want to decide to choose to air the answer in an interview that you conducted, and you want to choose to air one answer, right? But someone else thinks, well, I think you should have aired this other answer, right? Do you
Okay.
think that the government should be able to tell you which answer you want to air in the interview?
That's not what
Yes, if I have a public broadcasting license
Okay,
like CBS
well, that's
does.
you just don't believe in free speech then, frankly.
No, it's
You want the
it's a
government
public
being able to
license.
decide
It
what
is a
editorial
public
discretion
airwave,
that a
Whick.
company needs to make.
Hold on.
That's
I
just
think-
Whick, it's
true.
a public airwave. There are terms and conditions to be able to broadcast. You have to sign to agree to those terms and conditions. We
Can
do it
they
all
violate the
time.
First Amendment?
Those terms and conditions? Yes, they're
No,
not
they
violating the
cannot.
First Amendment. They're terms and conditions to broadcast over.
Dude.
They're not violating the First Amendment.
You cannot sign away. Like I can't
Whick,
legally
can I ask
decide
you-
to be your
Whick,
slave. For
Whick,
example,
can I
we
ask you a
can't make
question?
that like I can't sell myself into slavery because slavery is
Whick.
illegal, right? Slavery thing. I can't make a
Whick.
term and condition where I violate, right? The government specifically violates your First Amendment rights. They can't do that. It's illegal.
Whick, do you think that propaganda should be legal, right? Like the
Yes.
Smith Monday.
100%. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you
so-
agree? Right? Do you agree?
Yeah. No, I actually disagree.
You
And
do-
I'm,
So you
just be
don't
clear.
also
I just wanna
believe in
be clear.
free
I
speech.
just want to be
Don't
clear. You
hear
think that you think that I just want to be clear. You think that wait, I just want to be clear. I just want to be clear.
Breathe.
You think that propaganda should be illegal? Is that
I
right?
think that if it's on public airwaves, right, where it's not something that you pay for, then yes.
It's not part of my question. Wait, no. So I asked a very specific
I think
question.
that I think
Do
that you can
think
lie all
that
you want.
propaganda should be
on
illegal.
I think that you can lie all you want on a service that people are paying for, where they
That is
understand
not what
they're
I
looking at.
asked. So
I
I
understand.
asked a specific question. I asked, should propaganda be illegal?
No, in the public. So we had the Smith-Month Act, right? And or we have the Smith-Month Modernization Act, okay, where Obama basically made propaganda legal. I'd like to go back to a time before that, right?
So do you think? I don't actually don't understand. Do you think it should be legal or illegal?
I think that there should be restrictions on propaganda.
So you
Okay,
want
so
restrictions on
you're
speech?
against the First Amendment. You want the government to be able to tell you're a bootlicker, you're a bootlicker, and you think that the government should be able to tell you what is propaganda and what's not, and make it illegal. You're just against the First Amendment.
So the actions don't restrict free speech. Okay, you're talking about like Shawn just said, right? Deception and propaganda. So essentially, you want the government, right, to be able to, let's say, on a broadcast network that they can influence, right? You want them to be able to say, "Hey guys, actually, here's the thing. You're supposed to eat. You're supposed to drink bleach, right? So you're supposed to drink it. Bleach is healthy. Bleach is good for you. Drink bleach, right? You think that that's free speech, right? It's something that's damaging, right? But you think that it should be legal because you can just say whatever you want. You're a free speech absolutist, right? So like
someone. Wait, it's not absolutist. I agree with the First Amendment as understood by our
but you think-
framers,
but you
and as
think that-
and excuse me, as expounded by the courts of the United States. And so I don't agree that every spoken word is protected.
Well, the Supreme Court.
So I don't agree that every spoken word is protected speech. That's ridiculous. There are
Sure.
categories of
The Supreme
unprotected
Court
speech.
upheld
There are
a challenge to the public broadcasting license system, though. Do you know that?
the public broadcasting license system is not the misinformation rule, correct?
I'm not talking about the misinformation. Yeah,
Is
no,
it-
the
is it-
news
is it-
distortion
is
rule.
it
Yes,
the
the
same-
news distortion. Yes, the news distortion, not misinformation. Again,
Yes,
if you have a public broadcasting license, you are subject to that rule.
Okay, so
And the
Fox
Supreme Court
News.
said that's totally fine.
Let me ask this: Should Fox News be
Supreme Court-
investigated
did the
for
Supreme
editing
Court-
Trump's answers in the Bronx barbershop interview?
sure.
What's that?
Yeah,
Wick?
sure.
Okay,
What'd
so
you say, Wick?
should
What's the
Fox
question?
News be investigated for editing Trump's answers in the Bronx barbershop interview?
Did they put
again-
out a copy of that interview with him with different answers?
Yes,
first?
he had rambling answers that they edited down. The FCC, right, could have brought charges against them, but they did not. Do you understand
they
what I'm
edited it
saying?
for brevity,
If I may
though.
finish.
They
if I may
didn't-
finish,
Okay,
if
go
I may
ahead. I'm
finish.
sorry.
Okay.
Yep. No, you're
You're
good.
Yep. What I'm saying here, and my point here, is it becomes obvious as to your initial question. If we rewind the tape, right, all the way back to why is this obvious? It's obvious when you have the FCC going after its political enemies or enemies of Trump specifically, and when they do the same thing that Fox News does, and then they don't even investigate Fox for it. In fact,
It
they
wasn't the same
refuse to
thing,
bring
though.
it to investigation. It becomes
It wasn't the
obvious
same
that
thing.
there is a double standard at play, and it becomes obvious that it is retaliatory against his political enemies. That is why.
Wick, I want to be clear. It wasn't the same thing what Fox did to Trump and what CBS did to Kamala. What Fox did to Trump, well, you want to say he rambled and they edited it down to make it, to shorten it up and get it tight for
Changed
their
his answers,
program?
yes.
No. He did not change and re-record a new answer. Kamala Harris's answer was not edited down for time. Kamala Harris's answer was removed from the interview and replaced with a completely different answer. That is totally different. That's, again, going to a dealership and buying a 2025 Chevy Silverado and getting a different car, or getting a Chevy Silverado and it's the wrong paint color.
That's not the same at all. It's disanalogous.
It is the same.
Are both answers something that she said?
Yeah, she said them, but they were totally
choosing
different
to answer
than what
one
she
answer
said. No.
that she said, if I may
different.
finish, choosing to answer to air one answer that she said. It's not lying. They aren't saying she said it, but she didn't actually say it. She said it. She gave that answer. Choosing to air one answer over another is textbook editorial discretion. They are not trying to say that she it wasn't her that said that. They aren't putting words in her mouth. It is textbook editorial discretion.
Let's use your own argument, though, right? Because we have to make assumptions, like you're making assumptions, right? What if the purpose behind them doing that was to influence the election?
They can do that. They are allowed to do that.
So they're allowed. So the media is allowed to influence the election through deceptive means to favor a candidate over another.
It is not deceptive
for that, right?
It is deceptive. It is deceptive if you air, because here's why it's deceptive. Again, look, if you want to say that somebody sat down for an interview on 60 Minutes and answered a question, question A, what's your favorite color? And somebody says red, then they say green, then they say blue. And they say, well, I look the best, so let's put blue, right? If you're not releasing that to the public beforehand, there is no deception, right? You've gotten a collection of answers. You've pieced together which ones you think are the best for your show, and you've moved on. What the problem here is that CBS released a copy of her original answer and then aired the program as if that answer didn't exist. That's where the deception comes from. It's not that they edited. Editing is fine. It's the fact that they said, here was her answer. No, wait. Here's her answer, right? Because they realized when that answer went viral on the internet that it looked bad for her. So they took it out and put in another answer and aired it under the assumption that that was the way she answered the question, when everyone knows that wasn't the way she answered the question initially, because we have a copy of it. Whatever happens behind closed doors that's not disclosed to the public, I don't care. It doesn't matter. You can edit. Whoa. You can edit anything you want.
For like a minute 30,
you can
right?
edit anything. This is the first long answer I've given, Pisco.
Yeah,
Shut up.
I'm
bullshit.
I will
Bullshit.
say, I will
This is the-
hold
oh
on.
my God, such a fucking
I am
lie.
agreeable to let Shawn finish, but land the plane quickly, Shawn.
Sure thing. No problem. Again, my entire point here is that the public got one copy of the product and then was given a different copy of the product when it was aired. It was a bait and switch. That is deceptive, period. And that is a violation of the news distortion rule, which is a term when it comes to retaining your public broadcasting license.
Your complaint is that they released both answers to the public?
No. My
That's what they
complaint is
did.
they
How is that
released one
deceptive?
answer to the public and then passed it off as if she never answered that way.
But they released both answers to the public. You agree, right?
You just don't understand the difference between editing and deceptively editing.
I think you don't understand.
Who gets to decide? Who gets to decide? Who gets to decide? Who gets to decide that?
The FCC. That's how they investigate.
So the government, right? So this is the problem, right? So when you have a rule, by the way, which has never been on all fours tested, like the rule that they're proposing in the FCC, it cannot violate the First Amendment. And what's going on here, right, isn't actually some concern with deception. What they're saying is preposterous. What's going on here is Trump is targeting CBS. Why? Because he thinks that their edit isn't good for him politically, or is better for Kamala Harris than it is for him. That's why he's doing it. And no one here can anyone argue here that what Trump cares about, what he cares about, are deceptive edits. Can you look the camera in the straight face and say that is why his administration is doing what they're doing? You guys are so full, and it's the same. It's garbage.
Hold on.
Yeah. So the reason why he's doing this is the same reason he's going after Ann Selzer in Iowa. It's the same reason. It's because he views them as being oppositional to himself. If the poll, Ann Selzer poll released, had been bad but in Trump's favor, right? It was off but in Trump's favor. I'm going to ask this question of Shawn and Misfit Patriot. If the Iowa Selzer poll had been off by the same margin but in Trump's favor, would he have sued them? Yes or no?
If the poll was in, what do you mean in Trump?
Oh.
It was in Trump's favor. Oh no, the Kamala +3 you're talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
So you're saying if that was in Trump's favor, would he have sued them?
Correct.
Is the question. Okay. I believe that if that poll came out and it was Trump +1.5, yes, I still believe he sues them because it's way off and it was coordinated.
Not what I asked. No, I'm sorry.
In
If
Trump's
the
favor.
margin-
At one point,
No, sorry.
if Trump wins by 1.5 is that not in his favor?
Answer the question. If the
I
margin
just
was
did.
off, no, shut the fuck up. The margin,
Dude,
the
you got
amount
some
that it was
problems,
off,
bro.
the margin, right? So
Holy
do you understand what a margin is? A
Yeah,
margin.
yeah,
Yes,
oh,
the
yeah,
margin. Yes, I know what the margin is.
If the margin of incorrectness was the same exact margin, but instead of being put in Kamala's favor, was against Trump. Do you understand that? Sorry, was in Trump's actual
favor
that
of
it
Trump.
helped him, right?
Okay,
And
so if it was
so
Trump
it boosted
+3,
him.
does he sue them? Yes, I think he does because it
No.
shows a 7-point
He's
shift in
saying,
a state
let
that's
me
not
offer
happening.
some clarity. Let me offer some clarity. For instance, if I'm playing basketball and somebody fouls me, but I still make the shot, does the ref stop everything and all of that stuff, even though I got the point?
Yeah, they do
they
actually.
stop and well,
No.
fuck.
I don't know
You
sports
just shoot one
analogies.
free throw.
Okay.
No.
This is what
I
I'm
don't know
saying.
sports
So
analogies.
Trump actually won. Trump actually won Iowa. It says here by like 13 points. Okay,
13 points. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the Seltzer poll was off by what? 16 points. If the
Yes.
Seltzer poll, if the Seltzer poll instead said that Trump won by like 19, right? Or sorry, add
30?
16 to
Yeah,
by
like
30
30.
points. Would Trump have sued Seltzer? Yes or no?
I think that he probably would have because he would want the polling to be. He would want the polling to be correct. This is the thing. You guys are making a lot of assumptions.
It's laughable.
Hold on. No. This is the thing. You think that we think like you. You think that Trump wants to cheat. You think that Trump would be happy about something like that, where it's like, I look really good, so I'm not going to look into it because it favored me. I think that we look at Trump through a different lens because, I mean, obviously we look at him differently than you. If Trump had seen that a poll was off by this many points, whether it favored him or not, I think that he would want to open an investigation or sue because I think that he would want the integrity of the polling. I think that he would want the integrity of the polling system to be accurate for the next guy because this is the problem. If there's something
laughable.
that's broken, it doesn't matter if it's in your favor or not. If it's broken, you fix
polls.
it.
Wait, there are such polls that overestimated Trump's performance. And he hasn't gone
Sure,
after them.
but you-
The
but
By
president-
30 points?
But you're giving a wild example.
No, by the margin. Stop focusing on the actual like.
Okay, by
the
16
actual-
points.
The margin, but no. It's
Show
not
me the
even
Trump
specific.
+16 poll.
Oh my God! I'm not talking about the specific number. I'm talking about the margin. You
What
understand that,
margin?
Shawn?
Okay, so then put a freaking margin down and tell me what you're
any-
talking about. You just keep saying the
any
margin.
given margin.
Holy
So
crap.
for example, if the popular vote overestimated Trump's performance by like 5 points, right? That's
There
a
was
margin,
no poll
right?
that did that. Next.
What's the point of these hypotheticals?
So
Look, hold on, just
There
real quick.
wasn't the poll that
Pisco,
did it.
Hold on.
So
The
finally
whole
somebody did it.
problem, the whole problem I'm having with the
Gentlemen,
conversation, just real
gentlemen.
quick, is because you guys, and I mean this with all due respect, I really do. You just don't know enough to really
Okay.
dig into these conversations. Let's look at the 60-minute poll, the 60 Minutes thing. They aired both parts of her answer.
You realize
They
you
did it
realize
in
that
two
you're-
different segments, but they aired
on.
both parts of their answer. You were calling that deceptive because that's what ChatGPT or your Twitter buddies told you to. You
hold
did
on,
not
hold on.
know what Mahmoud Khalil was actually charged with. You did not know the details of Ozturk that was, again, detained for weeks. You cannot point to a single law she broke, a single law they accused her of breaking. And let me be clear, during the trial that they had, the Trump administration during the trial presented no evidence. I want to be clear.
So who-
They
so-
presented no evidence. They
Hold
called
on.
no witnesses. They did not even choose to cross-examine her. We have, again, if I may finish, I'll be brief, I promise. We have example after example after example, so much that we do not have the time to go over each and every single one of these. We
You're
keep getting
finding the time because you guys don't
stuck
stop
on
talking.
them, right?
But
But
you-
we have a wealth of examples that
Okay.
dwarf anything Obama has done, dwarf anything Biden has done, dwarf anything Trump 1 has done, and you just do not know enough to have this conversation,
so
and
this
it's
is
frustrating.
Your argument is if we didn't know the questions ahead of time and we didn't have all of the facts in front of us for questions that we couldn't know that you were going to ask, then we don't know enough, so we are unprepared, right? That's ridiculous, right? We are giving you the rebuttal and the answer based off of the information that we have. So far, we have answered in, I would say, enough detail to refute your arguments. and you're mad that we don't have these specific details about every little thing. Now let's I hate to keep harping on this, but let's also go over the fact that how much fucking time you guys have had on the mic where you just rattled off a whole bunch of shit and then go,
crying,
you don't know,
you
don't know,
bitch.
you don't know.
Stop crying
Bro,
about the meta. No one
bro,
gives a fuck
look,
about
hold on,
it. Why do you
shut
keep
up.
going back to it?
You shush, right? Fucking take a fucking Xanax, bro. Look, if you rattle off a whole fucking litany of topics and then finish it up with you don't know, then yeah, that's a great debate tactic, but it's really not fucking.
I'm keeping it to 1 at a time.
Get to it, yeah. But now you are, because we bitched about it.
When have I not? Other than my opening statement, which I did lay out my outline.
Bro.
All right, let's
just
get back to the.
Yeah, I like to have the debate, and we don't need like a 5-minute meta fucking expression every time.
Pot,
we get
the
into
kettle.
this, and
He's like, yo, you're black.
And just to be so here's the deal. No one believes you, right? No one believes the notion that if a poll were bad but in Trump's favor, which there have been, Rasmussen is a poll that consistently overestimates Trump's performance. That he would,
okay, stop. Want to talk about not knowing anything? Rasmussen had a 2-point margin. 2 points.
So consistently in the course of different swing state polling, there are election outfits that give Republicans an advantage and overestimate, and no one thinks that in that context that Trump is going to launch investigations.
Okay,
he
that's
likes it when polls.
Stop it there.
He likes it when polls
false.
are beneficial for him.
So, yes,
you cited Rasmussen, and they consistently for the final 2 months of the election had an average of Donald Trump plus 2 points in the popular vote. He won by 1.5 points. Where's the problem?
No, check the swing states. Check the swing states, and it's not just by the way the national poll. I didn't cite Rasmussen just for national polling, and so one outfit that got things right was Atlas. Okay, and sometimes that the Republican leaning ones got things right if there's like, for example, some kind of systemic error in the polling. But are you denying, for example, that there have been polls that have been favorable to Trump and have overestimated his performance? You're saying those don't exist?
No, there absolutely have been. Yes, absolutely have been.
So Trump is not going to launch. Trump is not going to launch an investigation into those things. He hasn't launched an investigation into those.
No. I think
the reason why Ann Seltzer's being investigated isn't because the poll was bad for Trump. It was because there was a coordinated effort at the last second with different outlets to hype the poll and push a narrative in the media. That's what that was.
I'm going to read to you just real quick.
I want to hand it to Whick. I'm going
to read to you April 28th Truth Social post that Trump made about a Republican pollster, John McLaughlin, that made he called a fake news organization poll reporting on fake polls. He says this. He says, and I'm quoting here, "These people should be investigated for election fraud." The Truth Social post read, "They are negative criminals who apologize to their subscribers and readers after their internet hiccuped. I apologize. I don't know why it did that."
That's okay. We held off. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Back to where you were.
Sure. My point here is that we have Truth Social polls that show his approval rating at like 99%. Do you believe that his approval rating is anywhere near 99%?
Can you put the post on the screen?
Let me find again. Everything just crashed, so
no,
that's okay.
I'll have to.
That's okay.
You know,
give me a few minutes.
If I could just jump in real quick, I think that what you're saying is there was I don't have all the details of this, so let me just paraphrase from what I remember. There was a chart where it put the top 20 pollsters, and I think that there was only 2 or 3 that favored Trump, right? So if you're saying that Trump is not investigating the minority that favored him, but he's investigating the majority, there's more to choose from, if I remember correctly. Like I said, now again, we can get right back into what Whick was saying, but I just wanted to make that little caveat there, because I think that what you're arguing is that he wouldn't do it, and I'm trying to tell you that there's way more on the side of favorability against him versus the side of favorability for him, and I think that's his whole argument. So he wants to find out why.
So that poll, I mean, he's not going after Ann Selzer or the Des Moines Register for some kind of systemic error, right? So like overall, that before this last poll, it has been a very accurate poll over the years. It's been one that has been consistently, rated the gold standard by Nate Silver and others. Mm-hmm. He's mad because in this one poll, it was off by a lot. But that happens in the course of polling. There is, in fact, huge amounts of polling error, but the reason he's going after this poll is because it didn't inure to his benefit, and because there was a news cycle that he didn't like about it. And if you guys trying to convince us, you guys trying to convince us that, oh, this is all because he just really cares about polling methodology, it doesn't pass the smell test. No one believes that.
No,
shit.
I think here's what I think Trump does. I think what Trump does is he has common interests in going after the people that I guess you could view it as he looks like he's retaliating against him because he doesn't want it to happen to somebody else. So if he views that there's an injustice against him and he wants to go after some that injustice, right? He's not looking at it, in my opinion, in the lens of, I want to do this as payback. I think what he has been very well outspoken about, he says, I don't want this to happen to anyone, a Democrat, a Republican, an independent. I don't want this to happen to other people. He's been very vocal about that in multiple interviews over the years.
I threw in the private chat. I'm not sure how to do this. In fact, the first link reports on it. The second link is the True Social post, where he posts a poll showing that he has a 99% approval rating.
Okay, now hold on, Whick. I do want to be fair about this 99% approval rating. If you look at the bottom right-hand portion of this, okay, that was a poll that was conducted at CPAC. Okay, that's a conservative gathering. So that's not a poll that is saying that he has a 99% approval rating in the country.
But
that's a CPAC poll.
Even if you
that means among Republicans right after he won the election. Yeah, I think a lot of people who have you ever attended CPAC, Whick?
Yeah, he probably did have a 99% at CPAC.
Again,
I would say it's that type of convention. I've been to 3 of them.
It's one of those things. Again, if you look at the chart, they have up to 120%. This is obviously a bullshit poll. Like approval can't go up that high, but they make it's again. He's not going after pollsters.
Where are you talking about 120%?
Oh, he's talking about the chart goes up to 120%.
Yeah, the chart goes up to 120%.
That's so they can fit in the 99.
No, you have to read the chart properly. So 95% of them strongly approve, 94% of them, 4% of them somewhat approve, which means it's a 99% approval rating. That's what that is.
What's the top line?
No.
That's all it is.
The way you do charts is you make the extra 20% just so you can read the chart. Because
can you show me one other chart that ever does this?
Hold on. Otherwise, if you didn't do that, it would the top of the thing would literally cut off at 100%.
No, this is how approval polls are conducted. So if I asked you, Whick,
he's talking about the 120% line being there.
Where is the 100? Oh, that's just to show room for bars on the graph. Obviously, if there was 120%, you would see the numbers adding up to 120%. Okay, so that's
my point here is that Trump obviously has no problem with polls that way overfavor him over any sort of kind of realm of reality here.
This is after the election, Whick. This is after the election. This has no influence on anything.
So
it's also on.
That's the point. The point was that the Seltzer poll was negatively influencing or was unfairly influencing the narrative surrounding the 2024 election. A 99% approval poll. I wipe my ass with that poll. It doesn't matter.
There were plenty of polls overestimating Trump. Is it illegal or is it a crime for a poll to be wrong?
Can you find a poll that wildly overestimated Trump before the 2024?
Wait.
Yeah.
Who'd care?
Find one.
So if it was, I just want to be clear. So if we find a poll that wildly overestimates Trump in any contest in 2024, you're gonna concede that this was done for political retaliation.
No, I'm saying find one first so that I can at least see if you're right about that.
What would it take to change your mind about this?
What was the original question?
No, what would it take? I'm asking, what would it take to change your mind that they are going after Ann Selzer because not for the reasons you say, but because for political reasons?
What would it take to change my mind that it was because of political reasons? Is your question? I'm gonna have to think about how to answer that because I don't think that's even a legitimate question. I don't think they're going after her for political reasons, Pisco. I hope you understand that.
What it would take to change your mind.
Donald Trump would have to come out and say, I'm going after her for political reasons. That's what it is.
So I just want to be clear. Are you serious about that, Shawn?
Well, it's the same argument that you're making.
I am. So now find a poll.
So what we're saying is
find a poll that favored Trump by 16 points. Find one.
Wait.
Go.
So I am totally willing epistemically right there to show the audience what's going on here. He's saying that the only thing that would change his mind about whether Trump was going after Ann Selzer politically is if Trump admitted to it publicly.
Or
Hold
one
on,
of the investigators admitted
hold
to
on.
it.
No.
Or internal documents.
Let me jump in here. Let me jump in here. Pisco, what would it take to get you to admit that Mahmoud Khalil was working for Hamas, right? Like, what would the evidence need to be?
Sure. Happy to tell you. If there's an email between a known Hamas member and Mahmoud Khalil, if there's a video of Mahmoud Khalil pledging his loyalty to Hamas, if there is some kind of payment relationship with Hamas and Mahmoud Khalil, there are a ton of things that I can keep on spitting them off.
Okay.
Do you want me to stop? I can keep going for another 2 minutes.
I'd like you to stop. Now, I think what Shawn was doing was being a little hyperbolic. If there was any of those things in the Trump regard, we would also concede that argument.
We're gonna slow down. So I'm gonna ask you again. What would it take? What would it take? So give me an example of something.
Okay, how about this? I'm not done. How about an email?
I'm actually not done.
We know you're not done with the question.
I'm actually not done. I'm actually not done with my question. So you guys get very uncomfortable when we're slowing things down. Slow it down. So what would it take in the form of evidence to convince you that he was retaliating against Ann Selzer for political reasons?
Okay, so we could get, I would say, either correspondence, communication between either him or the Department of Justice or whoever is investigating Ann Selzer. If there's an email that says, yeah, we're going to go after her because her poll was bad for Trump for political reasons, or not verbatim, but you understand the idea that you can imply from that, right? That any sort of idea that you can imply from an email that says we're going after her because of the result of the poll, not because of the purpose of the poll.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, what you're saying is nothing short of, and because anything that I will give you circumstantially. So for example, if I gave you a bunch of polls that overestimated Trump, you say that's not going to convince you, right?
Yeah, no. If you give us circumstantial evidence, no, it's not enough. Is that what you want to hear? Because that's what we're going to say.
But circumstantial evidence is how you generally prove intent in the court of law.
No, if you have a case that is based solely on circumstantial evidence, 99% of the time the person walks.
Unless you're Donald Trump in New York City.
I'm sorry. What is even? Can you get what is direct evidence of state of mind? I mean, it really.
How about an email saying I want you to go after her because that was politically damaging? That's direct.
He could be lying about that. He could be doing a Broadway show. He could be doing some kind of LARP. Okay, so circumstantial evidence gets to intent, and that's how we judge it. So one way in which we might figure out if his intent is political is, hey, is he going after all these other pollsters that might get things wrong in his favor?
Stop. You said all these other pollsters. What pollsters, Pisco? What pollsters?
So
what pollsters?
Yes, what pollsters that approved of him did he go after? That's the question.
What pollsters in the 2024 election did he not go after? Answer. Go.
Shawn. So I want you to agree that if I produce these polls, you're going to say, "Oh, it looks like there's pretty good."
I'm not agreeing to anything. I'm asking you to just produce them, and then we'll go from there.
Hold on,
this is
gentlemen.
insane, Tara.
No, I'm trying to hand it back to you, Pisco, but I need everybody to just kind of settle down. Shawn, just stand by, let him get through his thought.
All right, I got my seatbelt on.
So I am not going to. If what you're saying is, it would not convince me, even if you were to show me 5 polls that overestimated Trump by the margin of victory, right? If you were to show me those polls, it wouldn't convince me this is political. Why would I produce it for you?
Well,
okay. All right. No, good question. No, good question. Great. That's a good question. I will move on this and say, if you can produce those polls in the 2024 election, not the approval rating poll that was taken at CPAC. That's not a 2024 election poll that can influence an election. If you can prove those polls, I will consider, I'm not going to move off my position completely, but I will consider that Donald Trump is hypocritically going after Ann Selzer. If you could show me those polls, what?
For political reasons, and thereby it would be a First Amendment issue, right?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I would consider it. I'm not going to say you 100%. I'm going to say I'll consider it.
Yeah. So look, here's the deal, right?
And by the way, wait. Sorry, Zach.
Go ahead.
When I say overestimating Donald Trump, Ann Selzer overestimated Kamala Harris by, what was it? 16 points.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could find, it's got to be the same. If you could find me a poll that had Donald Trump winning by 16 points.
Yep.
I'll consider it might be political.
And if he didn't go after them, so you see what we're doing.
Why would it have to be?
Hold on, no,
why
because your standard, you set the standard, right? The standard is Donald Trump is going after this person who had a poll that favored Kamala Harris by 16 points. So you're asking us, what would it take to consider that Donald Trump is only going after that person politically? What you would have to do is provide the counter poll.
It needs to be 16.
That would be at
It
least
needs to be. It needs to be.
Okay, no. Pisco. Find me a polling miss. Okay, here's a better one. The Ann Seltzer poll was a polling miss that favored Kamala by 3 and a miss on the margin by 16. Okay, that makes sense, right? Okay, find me a polling miss in favor of Donald Trump that also missed on a margin of 16 points.
Wait,
okay, while he's looking for that,
you're saying that changed the outcome?
No. Okay, so
let's say more slowly.
Okay, yeah, it's hard to explain. So the Ann Seltzer poll favored Harris by 3. The result was Trump plus 13 in Iowa. That was a polling miss of 16 points, right? But that poll favored Kamala Harris. Find me a poll that favored Donald Trump that missed on the margin of 16 points. It doesn't have to be, because that's why Donald Trump is, that is why that miss in Iowa is so glaring, because of how much it missed by.
So it's, you're saying it's not enough to show the margin of 16. It need to be 16 and flip the result to Kamala.
No. What I'm saying is, look, if Iowa was a swing state, right? And it had Kamala plus 3, but Trump won by 1, not a big deal. It's not a swing state. Donald Trump won that by 13 points, but that poll came out and with coordination with other parties had Kamala Harris up 3. Okay, fine. You can say not proof. You can say it's not proof, but you have not yet proved that Donald Trump is doing this politically, because you can't find a poll. You can't find a poll.
Wait, I just want to be clear to the audience. You just said it as fact. Do you have proof that it was done coordinated with Democrats? You don't have proof of that, right?
I didn't say Democrats.
Wait, no, sorry. Do you have proof that they coordinated this to hurt Trump? Do you have proof?
I do.
Okay,
there were the emails leaked out. Ann Seltzer leaked emails to the media that said that there was a damaging poll or a dramatic shift in her poll days before that poll was released. Yes.
Yeah. Why don't you guys understand this?
How does that prove that this was deceptive or something wrong or
in any way? Isn't it possible she's just dumb?
Isn't it circumstantial evidence that you just said that we needed?
Hold on. No, you just rejected circumstantial evidence that we can point to for Trump.
But you didn't.
And you're holding Seltzer saying that, right? We don't need it for Seltzer. Hold on, if I can finish, please. This is important, if I may. I understand, right? We're all, look, Pisco's a little talky. I get it. I understand, right?
Look, I don't want to hold you. I don't want to hold you.
I love you, Whick.
I get it. Look, the frustrating thing about this is that you said we need an email or something directly from Trump saying, we're going after Ann Seltzer for political reasons while they twirl their mustaches, or a video or something. But
that's
then when we say,
I said an email that implies that. I didn't say it had to be verbatim, so don't put words in my mouth.
Okay. But when we ask Ann Seltzer, what proof do you have that she's doing this deceptively? You don't need the same level of proof. You have a double standard. You are not holding the same standard for Seltzer as you do for Trump, and you have done this consistently throughout the discussion, where we give one standard for Trump and you have an entirely different standard for every single other person. And we can prove that right now. We can prove that with the FCC, right? We can prove that with the polls.
Ann Seltzer emailed media outlets about a dramatic shift in her poll days before the poll came out to essentially basically chum the water and set the tone. She did that. She contacted other media outlets. Those emails exist. That is part of the case.
That has to. That does not prove what you think it does.
And I didn't say it does. I said if Donald Trump or somebody investigating these pollsters had an email that merely a circumstantial, not merely implied that they were doing this for political reasons, an email communication that would directing the investigation, I would say, hey, this looks like it's political. And I'm literally holding both to the same standard. Seltzer coordinated with the media. If Donald Trump was coordinating with investigators for political purposes, I would say, hey, this is wrong.
Now, let me jump in real quick before we give it back to you guys, right? This is what me and Shawn are saying. We have just articulated the amount of evidence, circumstantial or not, where we think the investigation is valid. You have emails and you have that discrepancy. So all we are asking for you, all Shawn did was ask, right? Give us, to steelman your argument, give us the comparable poll in the opposing direction if you would like us to agree with you. If you can find a poll that had the 16-point swing and had Donald Trump favored, then we would listen to your argument, but you can't provide it, which means you're just making this argument based off of assumptions. You
Exactly.
No, but so to be 100% clear, what you're trying to do is narrow your degree of what proof you would accept to such a specific level.
No, I'm just giving you. It's the end seltzer poll.
Hold on.
By the way,
Go
I
ahead.
challenge all you guys to look up all the talking time during this entire debate. You guys absolutely have taken more talking time than me, 100%. But it is not reasonable for you to say the only evidence I'll accept is in this election an overestimation by 16 or something in the ballpark of 16, as opposed to, how about, a margin? If you were looking at the specific state, let's say that Pennsylvania is only won by Trump by like 1 or 2 points, and it says that Trump wins by 5 or 6. Wouldn't that be an overestimation of we have to look into that methodology, don't we?
Can I ask you a question? Can you answer
that question? Wait, can you answer that question first?
No, it wouldn't be.
Because Pennsylvania's a swing state.
Okay, so there's different standards for swing
Yeah,
states
there
versus
is.
non-swing
Yes.
states. Okay.
Yes,
Was
because
Iowa-
Iowa was
exactly?
a solid red state that this lady
So
said
why
Kamala
are we more
Harris will
concerned?
win.
What do you think
Why
swing- what do you
are
think
we more
swing means?
concerned? Why are we more concerned? So what's going on here?
What does
What's going
swing
on here
mean?
is they're finding a distinction without a difference. Surely we would be more concerned
There's
with
no
manipulate. Wait, let me finish. So what you're finding here is like anybody's going to just find some distinction and try to make a difference out of it. Surely, and wouldn't you agree with this? We would be more concerned with polling manipulation in swing states than in non-swing states, correct?
I mean,
No,
what
no,
does
listen to
swing
me,
state
Pisco.
mean?
Whoa. Can you
Is
answer
Is
this
Donald
with an
Trump?
answer?
Okay, no, I'm going to answer this question for you.
Okay,
I'm
go
going to
for
answer
it.
this question for you. Is Donald Trump suing any pollsters that conducted polls in Pennsylvania?
That's a question. That's not an answer.
Is he suing any
Wait, is that a
pollsters in
question?
Pennsylvania,
Wait,
Pisco?
Wait, that's
He
a
doesn't
question,
want to
not an
answer that.
right?
You know why he doesn't want to
What
answer it?
question-
I'll
what
explain
question
why he
did I
doesn't
ask?
want to answer
What
it.
question
You know
did I
why he
ask?
doesn't want to answer it?
Gentle,
I'm gonna
hold on,
yo, yo, yo,
Pisco.
yo.
Hold on, Pisco.
I'm going to explain
Hold
why.
on,
on me.
I'm going to
Pisco.
explain why he
Hold on
doesn't
me.
want to answer
Yeah.
this question. Okay. The reason why he doesn't want to answer this question, right? The reason why he doesn't want to answer the question of is Donald Trump going after a pollster that found Kamala Harris winning Pennsylvania by 4 points when Donald Trump won by over a point is because Donald Trump isn't going after anybody who did that in Pennsylvania. That's right. The reason
what
why
question-
he is
what
going
question did
after
I ask?
Ann Seltzer.
What question did
Holy
I ask?
crap.
What question
The
did I ask?
reason
What
why
question
he's
did I ask?
going as you know what
What
question
question
you
did
should
I
ask?
ask?
Why you can't shut
What
the
question
fuck
did I ask?
up, dude.
What question did I ask?
Holy
Oh my God. All right,
What
all right.
question did I ask? What question did I ask?
Reset,
I don't know because
reset.
you won't shut
Yeah,
up.
So let's be clear. So I asked you a question, right, Shawn, and you didn't answer it. Do you agree with that?
No, because I don't know what the question was, Pisco.
Right.
Ask
So
one
why
question
don't-
at a
so why
fucking
don't you
time,
shut the
dude.
fuck up? Is it? So I only asked one question. So
Ask the question.
So here's the question, dipshit. Is it more problematic to have polling manipulation in swing states or safe states?
Good job.
It's
3
equally
seconds.
problematic to have polling manipulation in any state. How's that for an
Okay,
answer?
so if that's the answer, then our case studies should not just be looking at safe states, correct? If
No, it's
equally
not about it
problematic.
being a safe state, Pisco.
Wait. So you had just said, right? You had just said that you would have to find not a swing state. That the examples that I would have to provide
Because
to
that's
you
the
are
example
not
we're
in swing states.
using.
No,
That's the example we're using.
But wouldn't good evidence of political bias and manipulation and the fear of manipulation be even heightened with respect to swing states? And then
No.
you just said it would be. Wait, you just said it would be equal. So clearly, I can provide you evidence from swing states, right?
Can I? No, you can't because
Yes.
you can't find a 16-point margin.
No,
in
no,
the
no,
swing. You
no,
first of all,
but-
you haven't
Oh
found
my
a single
God.
poll.
Dude, wait,
Yeah.
wait.
Can I ask a question maybe that can get us back on track?
Absolutely.
Get in here, Whick.
Thank
Get
you.
in here.
Right, please. Okay. And this is to Farash and to Mr. Farash and Mr. Misfit. Do you find it at all problematic or worrisome to give the government power, right, to because they're not investigating her, they're suing her. To be clear, it's not an investigation; it's a lawsuit. Trump is bringing a lawsuit against this person, right, into court. When Trump has, I think you would agree, a history of litigating against people he doesn't like.
I think
Years and years.
that's your opinion of it.
Hold
That's
on.
your opinion
It's
of
not just my opinion. There is a history of
Are
this.
people not allowed to sue when they feel like they have had some type of civil injustice against
Do you
them?
find if someone is bringing frivolous lawsuits against their political enemies or their critics, even when they're not in
frivolous.
political positions, in order to bully them from criticizing them, do you find that to be a threat or problematic towards free speech? Do you think that has a chilling effect on people's speech?
If it was frivolous, I would find it that
Okay,
way,
so
but
if
you
he,
said
for
frivolous, I did
example,
not.
made a lawsuit against Trump versus Timothy O'Brien, and that was called frivolous by the judge and then tossed out. If he, for example, made a lawsuit against the New York Times, again, frivolous, tossed out, forced to pay the legal fees. If he perhaps was making a lawsuit against Tarla McCafe, and that was tossed out and forced to pay her legal fees.
hold on.
Washington
Are you talking about-
Post,
There's no point here.
tossed
Donald Trump
out.
was-
I am demonstrating a
about the
pattern of
Hold on, let
behavior.
Whick finish.
I am demonstrating and this is the problem I'm having with you. You're like, well, stick to one at a time. But in order to demonstrate the pattern of the behavior, I have to show the pattern of the behavior, which
Okay, go ahead.
which forces me to go through multiple points to bring it into
just try
one
not to
point,
make them too
right?
many. But go ahead.
I'm the point is a singular one that we have evidence. We have a large body of evidence that Trump engages in litigious behavior towards his critics. He sued Bill Maher, for God's sake, for calling him an orange orangutan, right?
Well, I don't
Can you
think
at
you- I
least
don't think you sue your
cede to
friends.
that?
I don't think you sue your friends. So yeah, no, like that's the thing. You're saying that.
Do you
Donald
find
Trump
it
is-
perhaps a problem
Don't-
that
no,
the
no, let me
president of the
finish.
United
I'll finish
States
the
is
first part.
using the power of law to
Hold on.
sue his critics in the court of law?
No. Look, here's the deal. I'm gonna steel man your argument, right? You think that because of the
I
pattern
just
of
want you to
behavior.
answer my question.
No. Can I answer in a longer form instead of yes or no? Can you not pin me down to a yes or no on this? Like, because it's a complicated question. I got to give you an
Answer
actual
it first. Answer yes or no first.
No, how about this? No, because. All right. Are you ready? Now can I
Yeah.
do my because? Right. Because
Yeah.
what you're trying to do is you're saying that because of Donald Trump's personality traits, right? He engages in frivolous
Behavior.
lawsuits against behavioral pattern. He engages in frivolous lawsuits against people, right? And now he's the president and he's having a lawsuit. So you're saying that it has to be frivolous because of his pattern of
I'm
behavior.
not saying it has to. I'm
well,
saying,
I
does
think
that
you're
suggest
implying-
it might be?
It might be that. All right, that's fair. If you
That's
frame it
fair.
that way, that's fair. It's a fair way to frame it, right?
That's
so
fair.
we would have to look at the merits of the actual lawsuit to see if it aligns with the frivolous lawsuits that he has as I believe he was a private citizen, right? Where he's a multi-billionaire, and I think that they get that all multi-billionaires, all rich people, all businessmen in his regard have lawsuits that go back and forth all the time because of their status and position. So
Can you name
You'd
another?
have to look at the merits. You'd have to look at the merits of this. And so I said no because, and here's the thing, no, because he's president now and he separates himself from his personal beefs, or he's supposed to anyway. And I think he does. So no, I don't. So the long-winded answer is no.
So if we have, again, a pattern of behavior of him weaponizing, right, which, again, this is my alleged, this is what I'm stating, this is my accusation, if you will, is that he has a pattern of behavior before he was president. He had a pattern of behavior now where he is not only weaponizing his lawsuits, his personal lawsuits, but also the government and organizations within the government, not just to CBS, not just to NBC, but to a wealth, to CBS, ABC, NBC, NPR, PBS,
I'm glad you brought up
Comcast.
ABC because they settled.
All again, this is part of
So
the
it's not-
extortion
so it's not
racket.
frivolous.
They
Well, no,
pressure
it's not
them,
frivolous.
saying
Not
we're
extortion.
going
They
to.
called him a rapist and he never got convicted of rape. They settled.
Okay,
Yeah,
they
see,
settled.
so-
They bowed to the pressure, which is bad because behavior that is
No, they were
rewarded is
wrong
behavior
because
that
they
is
called him a
repeated.
rapist and he was never convicted of rape. That's not why they didn't bow. He was called Wick. If I called you a rapist on public television, would you sue me?
No,
You should.
I
But
shouldn't.
you should.
I think that
Because I don't
slap
think you're a
laws. I
rapist,
think that
Wick.
slap laws. I think that
Trump
that
is a
kind of
rapist.
litigation is a
That's your
threat to
opinion.
free speech.
No, he's not. No, he
is a
isn't.
rapist.
No.
Not
Show
by
me
law.
the Pisco. Show me the criminal rape conviction right now.
I didn't say he was convicted of any crime related to that.
So your opinion is he's a
So
rapist.
you are defaming Donald Trump right now. Is what you're
Of
doing.
course not. No, he was found liable for digitally penetrating.
No, he was
a
found
woman.
liable
I
for
could tell
battery.
region.
For battery, he was
Wait,
found
was
liable.
he ever criminally
hang on.
convicted of rape?
Wait. I just want to be clear. Would you consider forcible digital penetration rape?
I would
Was
consider.
was he ever criminally convicted of rape?
I would consider forcible digital penetration rape. And I think
was he ever criminally convicted of rape, Pisco? Yes or no?
I never said he was criminally convicted.
You did when you called him a rapist.
No, I didn't. Wait.
Yes, you did. I can't call somebody a murderer.
Sean, I'm just going to be real quick. In order for someone to be a rapist, must they be convicted of rape? Yes or no?
In order for someone to be a rapist? No.
Correct.
In order for someone to be called a rapist, yes.
Wait. I just want to be clear. You just admit what you just said was fucking stupid, right?
No,
yes or no?
In order to be called a rapist,
so when I said Trump is a rapist, and you said it must entail you saying that he's criminally convicted, you were wrong about that, weren't you?
No, it's not. That's not what I said.
Oh,
it's not even close to what I said.
Because
I will explain it. Okay, I will explain it. Someone does not have to be convicted of shoplifting to have shoplifted, right?
Okay.
However, if I make the allegation against somebody and say that person is a thief, I better damn well have proof of that, or else I'm defaming their character.
Must you have a criminal conviction?
Yes, if I'm saying someone committed a crime, I better well have evidence.
Wait a second. So if someone says, "Hey, that guy just shoplifted," and the guy's like, "Really? He hasn't? Wait. Really? He hasn't been criminally convicted of it?"
What I'm saying is, you just called Donald Trump a rapist.
I call O.J. Simpson a murderer.
Sure did.
Okay, so that's your opinion.
Can I call O.J. Simpson a murderer?
It is my opinion that based on the facts, the conclusion, the strong conclusion that
so it's your opinion. So it's your opinion.
My opinion.
You started off with a declaration that Donald Trump is a rapist, and finish it off with "I think."
Yeah. It's my opinion. Guess who fucking said it? I said it. It's my opinion. Obviously, I'm stating what I think to be true.
Well,
what
I believe
to be true.
Official that we are rounding the 2 hours, and we can continue from here.
Okay.
Not this, but if you need,
I got a show to prep for tomorrow.
I gotta fly out. I gotta fly out tomorrow. So this is the end of.
I figured you would be done for the evening. But
I may stick around for about 10 or 15 minutes.
I'll do
just
10
to hang.
I'll do 10 or 15.
And then when I bounce, I have a full show I got to put together for tomorrow morning that I haven't gotten to put together. Usually it's done by now, but I'll hang for about 15 minutes.
You know what I'll do? I'll use my Pisco timer for 15 and I'll have that.
Dude, you guys are such crybabies. You talk more than me.
I'm going to name Pisco.
You understand that, right?
I'm going to name it.
You didn't name it?
You understand that you guys blab on and on about.
By the way, I'll buy you a label maker.
I just want to say, Mr. Patriot, really seriously, I'm going to put as my introduction on the debate, you completely fucking up who controls the West Bank and everything you said about that. So don't worry. That'll be front and center when everyone sees how fucking pathetic you guys are and whining the whole time about the fucking meta.
What you're saying is you're going to find the one thing that I might have to pay to gap
I mean, the whole thing. I'm going to post the whole thing.
And you're going to frame the entire debate as you want.
All right, let's put our rulers
away, have you found those polls yet?
Gentlemen. We're going to go into closing statements.
Found the polls yet, Pisco?
Yeah, we have the polls.
Misfit, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with your closing statement, please?
Who was it? Me?
You.
Wait.
Yeah.
Me? Oh, okay. Here's my closing statement. Okay. Again, basically what I stated in my opening statement. There is literally zero evidence that Donald Trump is a threat to free speech, right? And in fact, there's evidence to the contrary based off of his executive orders. The only things that our opponents have brought up in this entire debate is their opinion. They have not proven anything. They have not given us any hard factual evidence. They said, well, because of a pattern of behavior, or here's some circumstantial evidence. When Shawn asked them for a poll to refute the logic and reason behind the FCC going after a certain, and they did the same thing with the Hamas protest, right? They say, if you don't have the evidence that Mahmoud Khalil was coordinated with Hamas, then Mahmoud Khalil is innocent. But then in the same token, they come back and say, we don't have the evidence for what we're saying, but you have to agree with us. Right. So this whole debate has basically been a struggle session with Pisco, where he's talked really, really fast and tried to get out of many, many points because that's his debate tactic. His debate tactic is flood the zone. What we tried to do was we tried to have an articulate argument, wait for the questions that we basically were bombarded with and answer in kind, but we couldn't for the most part. And anytime Pisco gets, challenged on that, he goes to ad hominem. I think that Pisco's behavior, and not Whick was doing great, by the way. Pisco's behavior kind of took the L in the debate just based off of anybody's general, common sense logic when they watch this. So in summary, prove Donald Trump is a threat to free speech. Nope, you didn't do it. Right? We have proven that we knew what we were talking about. They proved that they knew how to talk really fast and make accusations. That's the end of that.
Thank you, Misfit. Shawn, to you.
Okay. Misfit got out everything that I ordinarily probably would have said, but I will say this: I'm not going to speak about the conduct of the opponents in this debate. I think I think I had a great time. I will say that I did have a good time. But I will say this: the proof that Donald Trump is, quote, one of the greatest threats to free speech that we've seen in the last 20 years just is not there. Every instance that was brought up tonight had been countered with pure and true violations of the law. Mahmoud Khalil was found at his protests having in circulation at his protests Hamas propaganda. And by that immigration rule that the Secretary of State can cite and the Secretary of State can execute to revoke a student visa, those are activities that are prohibited, and those are activities that are a danger to the United States foreign policy. That's number one. I don't see that as a threat to free speech. I don't think anybody, if it was a threat to free speech, I don't think anybody is going to be going to either Whick or Pisco's door tonight, knocking and dragging them out of their homes. Okay. I likewise, I have dealt with it myself, where because of things that I have said on the internet, I've had a SWAT team show up at my house because people don't like what I say. All right. And that's fine. I would never do that to anybody else. I'm not about that. Is Donald Trump one of the greatest threats to free speech that we've seen in the last 20 years? I don't think the evidence is there. There are opinions. People can say it. People can talk about what they disagree with that the president is doing. They could talk about his behavior. They could talk about things that they wish he would do differently. None of that makes him one of the greatest threats to the First Amendment that we've seen in the last 20 years. None of it. And he certainly is not a greater threat than what we lived with under the Biden regime for the last 4 years. The Twitter files. Parents at school board meetings. You have a parent who questions their child's curriculum at a school board meeting. They're put on a domestic terrorist watch list. I know a ton of those parents who this happened to. I went to school board meetings with those parents when I lived on Long Island. They were put on terror watch lists. I was put on a terror watch list for peacefully attending a school board meeting. I don't see that happening here under the Trump administration. Granted, it's only been 3 months, but it didn't happen the first go around. None of the people who were engaged in the destructive Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots in Seattle, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York were put on domestic terror lists, and they did things that were arguably far more destructive than a parent at a school board meeting, or somebody who didn't wear a mask in public, or somebody who held a gathering with too many people, or somebody who didn't want to get vaccinated and go to a music concert or get something to eat in New York City. There is no greater threat to free speech than what we just lived through. And to try to equate that or ignore that and say that Donald Trump is a greater threat or one of the greatest threats that we've lived to in 20 years is preposterous. It's ridiculous. It's your right to have that opinion, but there are no facts backing that up.
Thank you, Shawn. Pisco, to you.
Yeah, so these people don't even understand the basics of the First Amendment. They think, for example, that it wouldn't be protected speech to support Hamas or an organization that the government designates as a terrorist organization, as though the standard in Brandenburg wasn't easily available to them and has been the law of the land now for decades and decades and decades. They think, for example, that propaganda should be made illegal, and it was a bad thing when Obama made propaganda not illegal anymore, as though, imagine, right, political deception weren't protected by the First Amendment, or political edits weren't protected by the First Amendment at most, right? Even grant all the bastardization of the facts that these people provide regarding Mahmoud Khalil and others, suppose that they were able to produce evidence, which they never did, that he is linked to any of these pamphlets, or that he himself supports Hamas, or that he made any statement in favor of Hamas. Suppose that they were able to provide that evidence. That's core political speech. Yes, to support political terrorist organization. Yes, because who decides? The question and the problem with the First Amendment and what it recognized and what the framers recognized, it says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Why? Because we don't trust the government to be making decisions based on political favor or lack of favor. That's why we don't, for example, put in the hands of the FCC to determine a rule for itself about when it's something is misinformation or not misinformation. That's exactly what they would want you to believe with the Twitter files which was the government involving itself in the affairs of Twitter and deciding what's in misinformation, what's not misinformation. Somehow they understand the problematic nature of, like, I guess, private organizations and private companies deciding what's misinformation, not misinformation, but they don't see the problematic aspect of the government doing the very same thing. Go further along on some of these cases. They say, for example, it's harmless. It's harmless when someone who, has to go through the process and be arrested for 3 weeks for doing no more than publishing an op-ed, right? They haven't even read the charging documents related, or the removal documents that charge is removable, Mahmoud Khalil and Secretary Rubio's determination there, that make no reference and no allegation to Hamas or any connection between Mahmoud Khalil to those indications. And they would have you believe, right, when that Donald Trump, he just seriously has a really good idea about going after polling misses and going after methodologies, and he just has a really good set of facts behind the Ann Seltzer poll. That's why he's retaliating after them. That's why, for example, he's retaliating after those law firms for their association with lawyers, which we didn't really even get into, or some of these universities. And they're telling you, don't worry, trust the government, trust the intentions of the government when they're going after people that you don't like, and just rest assured that Trump has your best intentions and the best minds and interests of the American people in mind. I mean, he would actually have you believe that when Trump is going after Ann Seltzer, that he's just doing it for the next guy because he doesn't want the next guy to deal with what he had to go through. It's completely preposterous. They're jailing people on the basis of their political speech. They're threatening their licenses on the basis of the political speech. They're revoking meetings with lawyers on the basis of political speech. They're threatening due process so that they don't have to give people full hearings on issues related to their speech. And it's all part of a coordinated effort to chill speech, to chill dissent. That's part and parcel about what they're going after. That's why they're attacking the universities. That's why they're attacking the institutions, the law firms. That's why they're attacking, even, for example, private actors, corporations who are not friendly to Trump. And that's also why they're doing the tariff policy. The tariff policy is to make sure that people are bending the knee to Trump and to make sure that they're getting his political favor. It's all linked and coordinated. They can't see it because they're political hacks, they're government bootlicking shills, and whatever they say, whatever evidence you present them, right? Their standards for showing that they're linked to Hamas is what? He was at the protest, physical presence in the protest. That fell apart when talking about January 6th. Or, in order to show political bias, you would need to show another non-swing state poll that had something in the range of the margin of 16 points in favor of, Trump that he didn't go after. It's all bullshit, ad hoc standards that they're inventing for themselves to try to justify a narrative that, in fact, Trump isn't attacking the First Amendment, where it's clear with anyone with eyes, he's going after people. He's doing what he campaigned on, which was political retribution.
Thank you, Pisco. Whick, to you.
We talk about facts and feelings, right? And I understand that my opponents here have a lot of trust in Trump. They support the man. They believe him when he says a lot of words. But I would challenge you to look at his behavior, not what he says, but what he does. What has he done? Again, he has issued executive orders targeting law firms that represented clients he did not like. He has banned those law firms and all that participate in those law firms from federal buildings, a clear violation of the First Amendment. This isn't a feeling. This isn't a vibe. This is a fact. You can look it up. There are court filings. The executive order exists. You can find it. It's not a feeling. It's not a vibe. We have the letter to Harvard, which called for an audit of their speech and things like that, including to audit the viewpoints of the student body, the faculty, the staff, to reduce the power of certain students, faculty, and administrators targeted because of their ideological views. All of these things are, again, expressly being done right now, and I can list a laundry list that I do not have time for in my closing statement that dwarfs anything that the Twitter files, COVID censorship, all things that I agree were bad, but this is far worse, and it's only been 5 months at this point. We have documented evidence that I can present. My opponents have, I just trust him. When he takes that $400 million from Qatar, I just trust him. I think he could do it. He won't do anything bad with it. It's not a bribe. We just trust him. I have, again, case after case after case after case that I have presented. Again, you have not demonstrated a command of the facts in these cases. You have not pointed to a single thing that Ortiz, for example, or Stuck, the lady who wrote the op-ed, did that was illegal, but yet you acknowledge that the Trump administration detained her because of her op-ed. That is the charge that she was, the removal document that said she was detained because of her op-ed. These are clear violations of free speech. And let us be clear. If you don't believe in the free speech of everyone, you just don't believe in free speech, frankly. And that's my closing statement. I'm Wick TV. I love you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Wick. I appreciate that. For the record, ladies and gentlemen, I ran a poll to determine who the audience thinks spoke the longest. I questioned who talked the longest during this debate. Wick came in with only 9%. Shawn came in with 15%. Misfit came in with 20%. And Pisco, you took the 56%.
You gonna sue that pollster too, Pisco?
Crazy.
Gonna sue that pollster. We're gonna sue the hell out of her for that one. For the record, Wick, I just want to say I actually do think the Qatar thing is a mistake by Trump, but you know.
No, same.
Oh, that's big of you. It's corrupt, right? You agree it's corrupt?
No,
I agree it's a risk.
It's a risk. It's not fucking corrupt to get a $400 million plane and for him to use it after he's a fucking president. If
he said he was going to donate it,
he's not going to use it.
Not going to use it.
All right, gentlemen.
Can you at least agree if Biden did this shit, you'd be crying?
Don't make me pull out the Pisco timer.
Since everyone is on a time frame, I went ahead. I dropped the open panel link. It is now pinned in the chat. If you want to jump backstage, go ahead and do it now because we're going to run through just a few super chats just to preserve time for everyone who is leaving sooner.
Yeah, I'm doing Pisco. The Pisco timer is going 15 minutes, and then I gotta go. So Pisco timer on.
Fair enough. We'll move fast. Jack Federer with a big 5. The minute you defend January 6th, you tip your hat that you were both ignorant of the fact and lying about what happened. Shame on you for continuing to lie. If anybody has a brief response. Yeah.
Now, is that is he talking about us defending January 6th?
He's talking about us.
Okay, well, I was at January 6th, so fuck off. I know exactly what happened, and I saw it happen firsthand. You weren't there.
You're a fucking traitor. You're
I'm a traitor.
I'm a traitor.
You know what happened on January 6th? Antifa stalked me, slashed my tires.
Election, you fucking liar.
Slashed my tires. I got out of there. My name's on a police report. We got out of there when we saw it wasn't going well.
You should leave this country, bro. Go somewhere else. This isn't for you, man.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't agree with you, so you should leave my country. Very
Well, no, you hate
this
guy.
Real good First Amendment guy right here. I was entirely peaceful on January 6th, peacefully protesting. He tells me to leave the country. If that doesn't tell you that this guy's full of shit, I don't know.
I'm not saying you should be forced out. You should volunteer because you don't like democracies and republics where people vote for their representatives.
The big 5 says, based on the title tonight.
Traitor.
Based on the title tonight, he is not, but the guardrails will need to be rewelded after he is done.
Based on the title. Oh, I get it.
Yeah, the question, the prompt.
Yeah.
Another new account with the 5 reminder that Pisco's Whiskey Rebellion, a standard for charging people with insurrection for supporting J6, doesn't apply to supporters of Chaz somehow.
Good point.
Just misunderstanding. So I'm happy if you want to come talk about insurrection and the term insurrection, how it applies. Come on to the after panel. It's not the Whiskey Rebellion standard. It's a historical standard that's applied that has different.
Why was nobody charged under 18 U.S. Code Section 2383, Pisco?
So to be clear, I don't memorize statutes. Lawyers don't memorize.
Okay, it's called the Rebellion and Insurrection Act. How come nobody was charged with insurrection, Pisco?
So I think I should have been. I read Jack Smith's analysis. I don't agree with him. I think that people should have been charged for insurrection. Is the answer to that? I don't know.
How come they weren't?
Because they wanted easier charges and the
you know what the real reason was, Pisco? You know what the real reason was? Because the maximum sentence on 2383 is 8 years. The maximum sentence on 1512 is 20 years. It was all political. Shut the fuck up. Next.
That's not true. Wait. You understand you can charge? Wait. Stop. You understand you can charge multiple things, right? Yes or no?
Next.
Yeah, they could have.
Why were none of them charged with insurrection?
I would like to be able to
wait a second. Wait a second. Because he just whoa. You know you're fucked. So you understand that you can charge more than one thing, right?
I know that. Why weren't they charged with insurrection?
So the maximum insurrection wouldn't be a limiting factor on the other charges. Agreed? Yes or no?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a limiting factor. Then that proves my point even further. Why didn't they?
Fuck out, right?
Then why didn't they? No, they didn't.
The fuck out.
Well, did you know that putting your hands on a microphone doesn't make it actually louder, Pisco?
Why would the maximum?
Pisco, why didn't they charge him?
Why would the maximum sentence be a limiting factor?
Why didn't they charge them with insurrection?
I don't give a fuck at this point, gentlemen.
I'm the gentleman. He's a lady. Guy's hormonal today.
Josh,
I thought you said you didn't believe in trans people.
Josh in with a big 5 says FCC news distortion rule specifically excludes cable news networks.
CBS is not a cable news network.
Doesn't matter. Can't violate the First Amendment. Doesn't matter.
It does.
Chickham
Supreme
in
Court
with a big
disagrees.
10 says if an investigation is held and a crime is found, what do you think the crime would be? Would that crime conflict with the First Amendment protections?
I don't know what that's in reference to.
The
Yeah.
FCC
I'm not
violation.
sure either.
Oh.
Yeah, there's no crime.
It wasn't. It's not criminal. They're not. They're not
It's a
investigating
civil
or
lawsuit.
investigating CBS for criminal. It's a lawsuit about whether or not they violated the terms of their broadcast license, which in 1965 the Supreme Court upheld the broadcast license.
CBS and
But-
okay, sorry.
But to be
that's
clear, First
Sarah's.
Amendment applies to more than just criminal charges. So even if what we're talking about is the denial of a license, the imposition of a fine,
Yeah, there
you
are
can't just violate the First
there
Amendment.
are restrictions on the First Amendment, though. That's what you guys don't understand. You guys,
Okay,
you
but
guys
none of them
basically arguing-
regard what
None of them
happened with
apply.
editing. None of
That's
them
your
regard what
opinion.
happened with
Well,
editing.
none of them
that's
apply
not
here.
true.
Yeah, it
News
absolutely
distortion
is
rule-
true.
Exception applies.
We already said it. The news distortion rule
Okay.
applies
That-
because it was
that-
manipulative
again-
We'll
and
see.
deceptive.
We'll see.
If that is challenged by the Supreme Court, I will bet you $100 right now that the Supreme Court overturns that.
Okay.
Jack Fetter in with a big 5
I'll
says
take that.
CBS denies charges, same question, same answer, but a different portion of the response. This was editing, nothing more. You guys are misleading.
Yeah,
No, we're not the one who misled. CBS is the one who misled by making it look like she answered the question one way and then making it look like she answered it a different way.
That's
so
again
stupid.
repeating this narrative that is just incorrect on what actually happened, where they released both of the answers,
That is
all
what
the
happened.
answer, the complete answer. They just did it in two different segments.
Oh, I see.
Yes, that is something that editors do.
I bought a whole cake from the bakery, but they gave it to me half by half. I'm happy. Happy birthday, right? Come on.
That's the
Come
dumbest
on.
fucking comparison I've maybe ever heard.
Come
on
on.
anything.
Okay, I
And
get my whole
last one for now. A dummy thick with the Big 10 says just tuned in 15 minutes ago, but if they claim Trump's the biggest threat to free speech in U.S. history is the most ridiculous thing I've heard in a long time, especially if they disregard or deny Biden's BS.
What did Biden do that's really violated the First Amendment?
Are parents terrorists for going to school board meetings?
No.
Okay, well, his DOJ did that. So next, you want another
They
example?
did what? Wait, they did
They
what?
put parents on school board on terrorist watch lists using the threat tag EDU officials. Yes, they did.
Wait a second.
The
So
FBI
can
went
you-
to school
can
board
you-
meetings. Yes.
Should you investigate when there's accusations of threats of violence? Should the government investigate that? Yes or no?
That's what. Yes, they should. That's why we.
Yes,
That's
okay.
the argument
That's
we
why-
made.
So what's
That's the argument we
First
made.
Amendment- so
Because
what's
they
the
put
First Amendment
parents on
violation?
lists.
Wait, what lists?
They
What
put
lists?
them
What are you
on
talking about?
lists.
What lists? What are you
EDU, the
talking about,
FBI. If you
domestic.
shush, the FBI used a threat tag with their counterterrorism division hashtag. It was a tag in their system. EDU officials. That was the tag that they started putting parents on lists. A friend of mine got
So?
arrested at a school
For
board
what?
meeting in Arizona for standing there.
Is that's
He
all
was
did? So if I look at it-
speaking.
what's your friend's name? I'll look it up.
Kelly Walker.
Yeah.
Kelly
also,
Walker.
also,
Probably another
I mean,
traitor.
also, this is just a personal thing. Under the Biden administration, the FBI showed up at my house with 2 armed agents to talk to me about my social media. There was multiple instances of the FBI going to people's houses, speaking with them about their social media posts. I told the FBI to kick rocks and talk to my lawyer. They never told me specifically what I did. They showed up. I got it on camera. I posted it. It had millions of views.
What's the First Amendment deprivation there? I'm not following. So
That's
they're
what-
asking you questions. Can the government not ask you questions?
Yeah, no, exactly. Can the government not go after Mahmoud Khalil? Can the government not
They're
do this? Can the
depriving
government-
him. So what the government is doing is a deprivation in the case of Mahmoud Khalil, as opposed to showing up at your door to ask you questions. Which
Does he
they
not
don't
have
even to
legal-
any-
is he- is-
they
are
don't
they-
even-
are they taking away his
excuse me,
right to have a lawyer?
So I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
They don't have to have any reason to come to your house
What
to ask you
do-
questions.
what-
to be frank,
what-
but
what
but
due
what they're doing in
process-
Mahmoud what they're doing in Mahmoud Khalil's case is a deprivation. They're
What due
purporting to take away
process-
his green
what-
card and remove him from the country. And that is a deprivation for which
What
the First Amendment
do-
applies.
Is he
What due
removed yet?
process-
Is he
what
out?
due process is he?
No, he's in jail.
What
So
due
they haven't
process
removed
has
him
he
from the
been
country,
denied?
huh?
So when you're incarcerated on the basis of First Amendment activities, that is a deprivation. Every day is irreparable harm. That's why Ramaya Ozturk was released from jail. She won on so far in the district
Yeah,
court.
but what-
That's
that's
why
due
the First
process.
Amendment applies.
So that's due. So
Okay.
he's going through. So
Okay,
he's going
but-
through the process.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it doesn't matter if you put. So we should say the same thing to you, right? It doesn't matter because the FBI visited your home.
Correct.
Right?
Exactly. They have the right. They have the
No,
right
but
to do that. If they had reasonable suspicion to lock me up, right? If the FBI had told me this is what you said, right? You're going to jail. I would have gotten a lawyer. I would have gone through the whole due process, and then I would have tried to make my case about why I have a First
legal for
Amendment.
them. So I'll give you the differentiator because it's a good question. It was legal for them to go up to your door. It was illegal for them to lock up this woman.
Okay, so
That's the difference, right?
No, they're
Agreed?
allowed to investigate, and then if they have reasonable evidence to make
Was
an
it
arrest,
legal or illegal to wait? The judge determined it was illegal to lock her up. You agree with that, right?
yeah, but this happens all the time, right?
Okay,
This
but
is
it
how
was legal to go up to your door. That's the difference. It was legal to go up to your door. It was illegal to lock her up. That's the difference.
It's not illegal
One was a
to
First
lock.
Amendment violation.
No. It's not illegal to lock her up. They had.
Then why did she win her habeas claim? Then why did she win?
Yeah, because sometimes people get it wrong. I'm not saying
Because
that
it was
they
illegal.
didn't.
It was illegal.
No, it's not
That's
illegal.
why they let her out.
It's not
All
illegal.
Yes, it was. Then
right,
why
let
doesn't
me
she show?
ask the next question. I know we are on a time limit, and
Yeah,
so
we got
I
5
want to
minutes.
get through, but this one came in. Pondering politics in with the big 50. Thank you. Will the MAGA guys concede Fox and Newsmax spread 2020 election lies since they settled with Dominion
Nice.
that Dems could rightly investigate right-wing media? It was okay for Biden's DOJ to investigate Trump about J6 and classified docs.
All right, I'll answer this first. I believed all the Dominion cases were bullshit anyway, and I don't believe that Dominion is why the elections were stolen. So I think it was right to. I think it was right to investigate. Well, I think it was right for Dominion to sue them. I don't think Dominion fixes elections, and I take a lot of shit from my own people. I don't think Dominion voting machines were rigged in the 2020 election. That's not how I think the election was
Fox
stolen.
News is the question. Should the government investigate Fox
They
News? Is
can.
the question.
Yeah, they can.
Should they?
Well, it's already been settled.
No, should the government? Well, that's just a settlement between two private actors. Should the government come in and we should get a full report and a full
You
investigation?
know what? Honestly,
of the
yes.
right-wing media.
Hey, you know what?
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
I think. Hold on, but here I'm gonna make it even broader. I think that the government should reinvestigate the 2020 election all the fucking way.
No. Fox, specifically Fox News.
Yeah,
and
no,
other right-wing
I'm saying
outlets.
I'm saying all the
for
way.
spreading for spreading misinformation. Should they do that?
Oh, but they're gonna have to prove it was misinformation, won't they?
Yeah.
Should they investigate it? That's the question.
All
Yes,
right.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
knowing
Go
who's
investigate
back-
Fox.
And
Yes,
Trump
go
too. And Trump too, because there was 2 parts to that
knowing
question,
who's
right?
back-
$50.
Yeah, do it.
I believe
Absolutely.
there are a lot of people wanting to talk to Shawn and Misfit backstage. So I want to push really fast to get through this. I do apologize.
You're fine.
I'm just trying to be mindful that these people are waiting to talk to them and they are on time limits. Okay. All right. So I do want to run this fairly round robin oriented for the time being, only so that we can get through Q&A, if everybody understands how I mean by that. All right. So Duck, you were first in line. Can you pose your question, please, to the panel? You're muted, Duck.
Beautiful.
I'm ready. Okay. Hey, what's up? Thanks for the debate, discussion, debate, whatever that was. I'd love to have Shawn and Misfit answer this first. So my perspective as a liberal progressive, as someone who's patriotic, is Trump's always loved the camera, but he's always hated the American people. He's always hated this aspect of free speech. And so if he set out to destroy the United States to begin with, why isn't it the case that it's believable in this sense, charitably, that Trump has just moved xenophobia and all these things in not just the media where people don't feel safe being moderate, but he's moved all of these functions of hatred into institutions? Is that the wrong way to look at it?
I believe
I do
so.
think it's the wrong way to look at it. I don't think he's moving hatred, so to speak, into the institutions. I believe we're getting back to a level of common sense. Let's take an example of men and women's sports. Okay, Duck, I'm going to assume that you are a male. You've got a nice beard, so I'm going to assume that you're a dude. I would think that if you decided that you identified as a female, you shouldn't be competing against women in cycling or weightlifting or wrestling or
Why is that?
any sport really.
Why
I
would I
think
feel that way? My wife was
why.
a better cyclist than me for a lot of our lives.
Well,
Well, but I'm not talking about your wife being a better cyclist than you. I'm talking about you are born with a biological
no, but you
advantage.
said something about me, Shawn. You said something about me that's not true. So correct it.
So you don't believe you should compete in a professional sport? You think you should have the right
Why?
as a male to compete against women in professional sports?
Why? Why not?
Because it's unfair.
Okay, well, that's
so-
your opinion.
And
This is not
okay,
my
and
No,
let
it's
me
not. It's
clarify.
science.
Let me clarify also to you, Doc. Just because
It's also not the question.
just because you happen to suck at something and your wife happens to be better at it, doesn't mean that it goes against the generalized statement and consensus of data in biology, right? So just because you have the advantage and you don't utilize it, or maybe you don't train hard enough, or whatever the case may be, doesn't mean that you don't have the potential to already do better than a female. Misfit, did you want to chime
Yeah,
in?
no. So I was gonna add to that, right? So the question, I'm gonna address the actual question, but just to opine off of that, I think that what we're trying to say is Trump actually is not going with hate because he's trying to exclude men from women's sports. It's more of like Trump is actually trying to be fair to the women. So it's like he's actually doing a good thing for the women, not a bad thing for the trans people. And if they want to have their own, category in their own sport, then they can do that. That's, I think, the best solution for this. Now, to answer your question, your original question, which was if Trump is bringing in this hate and division, can you provide me with an example? Duck.
An
Can you
example of Trump
can you
being
pro-
hateful.
Yes, please.
Why not? Why don't we
Muslim
use? Why don't we use a generalized version of "they're eating the dogs and cats," referring to immigrants most likely
So you,
making minimum wage in the United States like every other American.
I'm not familiar with that quote. Making minimum wage like every other American.
Well, he said the eating the dogs.
You're
and
not
cats
familiar
from
with
Springfield, Ohio.
with Trump telling the American people that minimum wage workers are eating dogs and cats.
No. I think that he was saying he was going off
Did I
of a
stutter?
report. He was no. You don't have to do that. We can have a respectful conversation.
No,
so
because
no.
Why are you dodging? Don't
Would you-
stop dodging.
Doc,
You
I
were
think
doing
you
this the
need to
entire time.
hold. Doc, I think you need to hold on so he can answer the
Yeah.
question.
Trump was responding to a report. The report came out to be not true, right? But he was responding to a report where there were Haitian immigrants that were eating dogs and cats. There were photos of people that had like they were photoing people that were grilling.
Bullshit.
They were hold
What
on.
are you talking about?
Hold on. They were grilling, and when people looked at the grill, it looked like a dog. It looked like a cat on a grill.
So it looked like, but it wasn't.
No. So
It was
Donald Trump,
chicken.
hold on. So
That's
Donald
not
Okay, can I ask Duck a question?
made a
I have a
mistake.
question for you, Duck. Do you believe it's hateful for the governor of New York to say that young black men in the Bronx don't know what computers are?
Yeah, that would be a hateful comment. I would also want the full context of a
No, that's what
statement
she
like that.
said. She was saying she wanted. She
One
said that
question,
young black
and
men
before I
in
get
New York
my
don't know
way.
what computers are.
I'm going to
Well,
give you.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
Let
give
me go
technology
ahead
is
and
foundational for the
let me
United States,
actually
so there's
interrupt.
something that we would agree on
$50
there.
was dropped in to kick everyone off panel except for our original panelists. We've got Grid here who wants to have his time and place. And Grid, the floor is yours.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. How you doing?
I didn't actually get to hear the debate. I was over.
It's really hard to hear you.
Panel.
I'm turning his volume up
Okay.
on my end.
Am I?
Go ahead.
No, you're
You're-
good now.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, cool. Right. Sorry, in the back chat, it's very funny. Hey, how's everybody tonight? I didn't get to see the panel. I was over arguing with other people.
So you didn't see
Pisco
the
had a
debate.
great show.
Pisco did great.
It was a good show. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll watch it on the. I'll watch it on the VOD. I haven't. So I had to do it. Like these guys get up here and they sit for an hour and not say anything, and we have to listen to Duck ramble for a half an hour before he. And it's a public service that I do. Really.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Grid.
After your question, I do have to go, so you can.
Yeah.
All right.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a question. Just generally, why to the, I guess, Pisco and Whick, when I've debated before, this is the first time I've talked to Pisco. Why is it that you guys think that Trump is so bad for the country that you can't recognize any of the good that he does?
Great
Hold on.
question.
I think there's very.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead,
please
Wick.
go.
Sorry. You go. For it.
Sure. I don't think that everything Trump does is bad. When he does something that I think that might be good, I'm like, okay, maybe this will be good. For example, I'm not sure that it's a bad thing that he is trying to cap the prices on drugs. I don't know enough about that, but maybe might be good. I don't know, right? I'm not usually for price caps, to be clear, or price controls, but hey, maybe I'm willing to. Let's see, right? So there's one.
Yeah, no, I'm not against everything that Trump does just because it's Trump. Like, I actually thought, now I voted against Trump in 2016, but he could have been a very consequential president, and the American people did give him a second chance, and he's completely squandered it. But there's some good things that I think that he could do. I think that some tariffs would be a good idea. I think that if he revitalize some kind of deal with Iran, that would be a great idea, where we're not, entering into a second, large scale Middle Eastern conflict. I think that would be good. I think if anyone could have the leverage to clamp down on the sort of activities, I think the overreaching of Netanyahu and others, and finally get peace in that area, I think Trump could. So there are a lot of opportunities, rare opportunities that Trump has, and I don't just out of hand dismiss something because it's Trump. I thought the First Step Back was good. I think that in general, although I have problems with the pandemic response, I think preventing it from being a general recession or like the worst kind of recession by stimulating the American economy, that was a good instinct. Maybe it wasn't his, but yeah, those are all things that I think that he could do that were good, and that he has a lot of opportunities. He just is a very corrupt and evil person.
Can I ask you, Grid, though?
Yeah,
Why is it that you guys always assume this? And I get this a lot, right? You guys always assume that I hate Trump and everything that Trump does, and I can never give any concessions to Trump whatsoever. That was your question, right? Why do you assume
it's kind of my question, because I rarely ever hear. So what I hear, I guess what I hear, maybe it's just me. The other two could answer this as well, but maybe it's just me. But what I hear is, yeah, other people have done it, but Trump's doing it, so it's fucking evil and bad.
No, so
And
what
I
I'm saying,
and I hear this over and over and over again, to the point that I no longer believe anything that you say.
okay.
And I'll let the other two answer from their point of view as well. But that's my point of view.
Well, just
I
to
hear
respond,
all the time, well, Orange Man bad. Trump did
understand.
this. He's running this. He's doing that. But it's like you can't, even admitting for a second that he had a win would just destroy you. And that's weird to me. Like, I can admit, like I didn't actually have
just
that big
gave
a
him
problem with
wins.
the policy. With
I'm
some of
not
the economic
destroyed.
policies
Wait,
Biden put in
wait,
place. I think that obviously it wasn't him, it was his handlers, but I didn't have a problem with that. That's not why I didn't like Biden being president, but you guys never give an inch that I hear.
Wait, no,
and
that's
maybe I'm
so
wrong.
untrue.
And-
Wait,
and
no, that's
these
fucking
guys
just
just spent
did.
2 hours arguing with you. Maybe they can add something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'll chime in. I think what you're talking about is a general polarization, where I think that we do it too on the right, and I think that it's because the leaders, right, have sort of, and I'm not talking about at the top. I'm not talking about Donald Trump and Joe Biden. I'm talking about Congress. I'm talking about everybody at the top. They have pushed us apart, and there is a huge divide. So what happens is, we get into this cycle of looking at all of the bad, and you don't really recognize the good. And the way that I describe this when I bring this up as an analogy, think about it this way: if you had a wife that fucked your best friend, and you caught them in bed, and you just were completely that woman could cure fucking cancer, and you would still think she's a bitch. Right? Like, you'd just be like, yeah, well, she cured cancer, but cancer wasn't that bad anyway. Right? It's like, so what is it really is on both sides, where it's like, we don't like the other side because of all the abuse that we get from them on a daily basis, or we don't like the things that we're seeing. So we can't really see the good. And I think that it's true for both sides. However, I do the same thing that Whick and Pisco just did. When like, if like Joe Biden did something good, I would have been like, well, that's good. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But
I did.
you know,
I was able to think of something off the top of my
you
head.
can't think of a single thing that Biden did that you liked?
Shawn, can you?
I'm sitting here. I'm racking my brain. I'm trying to think of what Joe Biden did that I liked.
Did you like when he struck the Houthis?
Yeah, sure. Fine.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
there you go.
absolutely.
Easy.
There it is. Done.
Yep, there
Done.
you go. All right, but we do have to run. I got to go. But
Can I ask
thanks,
one
guys.
thing before you do?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, it's actually for Shawn. I want to know why you lied about your friend. Was it an Arizona man who you said was arrested for just standing there?
Yeah, he was standing at. Did you watch the video, Ryan?
I'm reading an article right now. It says the Associated Press reported that one of the men was carrying large black zip ties. They broke into the principal's office and they said they were
Didn't
going to
happen.
arrest her.
Did not happen.
Didn't happen.
Dude.
That's just
Did
super
not happen.
curious. So it's super weird that
No,
the
actually,
Citizen.com,
no. There's actually you could watch the
article
you could watch
says it did.
security footage of the school if you want to actually do your due diligence. Nobody broke into anywhere. He went with a parent whose child was being held in the office for not wearing a mask. Okay.
Okay, I gotta get a question.
I don't know.
I gotta get a question in here.
Nobody broke into nobody
They were gonna
broke
arrest
into
her,
a
right?
school. Nobody broke into a school and threatened to put anybody in zip ties.
They said they were going to arrest her, right?
No, they didn't say that. That was what was purported. That was not what was
the
said.
principal was breaking the law and they were going to
I got a
arrest her.
question for both of you too. Sorry, Ryan, but like we've got
That's
limited
fine. Yeah, no,
time.
I said my piece. Yeah, they got Shawn's a liar and a traitor.
Do either of you
Okay, thanks,
understand-
Ryan. Thank you, Ryan.
In fairness, Ryan was
you
supposed to
Believe in the
understand?
Associated Press.
Either
Go
of
ahead,
you-
Mel.
Guys,
Go ahead, Mel.
I'm trying
Go
to
ahead,
get
Mel.
back into the original conversation here, which
Hold
is
on.
Either of you
Mel
understand
was already
why-
trying to ask a question.
Do
Yeah,
either of you
so-
understand why it's good to have a fourth estate which acts outside of governmental interest?
What?
The press.
What happened?
And do you think
Clear
someone who's
question.
labeled the media the enemy of the people actually supports?
Oh, you're
freedom of
talking about the
press?
media. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Fourth Estate.
Yeah, the Fourth Estate. I was like, I'm tired, man.
It's okay.
Repeat that question.
I'll go with my second one. Trump has labeled the media as the enemy of the people. How does that sound like someone who favors the fourth estate?
Well, I think that when the Fourth Estate acts in the way that they have been for, I would say close to a decade, maybe 2 decades, where they
that
are,
someone in government
where-
doesn't like?
No. That I would say.
No,
Have you taken any poll? Do they trust the media? 70% of people say they don't trust the media. So when he says they're the enemy of the people, it's backed up with evidence. The people don't trust the Fourth Estate. So
Right.
why-
So the
Congress
president
the enemy of
enacts that disapproval, or is that like is that not separating government and the fourth estate?
If he's a representative of the people and the people are generally distrusting the Fourth Estate and he says they are the enemy of the people, he's responding to the actual people telling him we don't trust the media.
You think they don't trust it because he generates distrust by calling the media the
Donald
enemy
Trump
of
is
the
the
people?
reason the media lied to us? It's his fault that they lied? It's his fault that we don't trust them? No.
No, they
Yeah,
don't
it's
just
not his
lie.
fault that the media said the media did lie. They said that he called neo-Nazis fine people. That never happened.
Okay.
Okay. He said that he colluded with Russia. That never happened.
We'll do
Very
one
fine
I gotta
people on
go.
both sides. That's
All right, Shawn, I'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's not what he said. He said he condemns the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists,
Yeah,
and that they were good protesters at the protest that were not a part of those groups.
Very
You
fine
know
people
it.
on both sides.
You know it.
Both
You know.
sides-
Yo,
both
he
sides
said
for these two
media
groups were
said,
fighting. Very
"Shush,
fine people on both of them."
Shush. Listen to me. The media came out and said that he called neo-Nazis fine people. He never did that. Not once.
What is
Hold
both
on.
sides
Can
mean?
anybody hear me right now?
All right, Vibe. I'm gonna
Yeah,
give you.
we
I'm
can
gonna
hear you.
give you one before I go. Go ahead, Vibe.
Yeah,
All right,
Vibe. This is
okay.
that's it.
First
I'm out
off,
of here once you're done.
Thomas Jefferson was the first one to say nothing can be believed which is read in the newspaper, right? So
Yeah.
he is the first Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And he was the first traitor.
And who was the last one to say
Fuck you, Ryan.
nothing can be trusted? It was Barack Obama who said Fox News cannot be trusted. Right? This has been
They
happening
can't be.
Yeah,
forever.
They
Fox
can't
News,
be.
the whole
Right?
media.
So, I mean, this is a long going story here. And let's look at what the actual Constitution says. It protects our religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. I actually wanted to ask Whick this. Whick,
Please.
this is directly to you because I don't want to talk about Palestine. Sorry, Pisco. What is one thing that Trump has done to stop free speech? And I actually will even challenge you. He's probably the biggest free speech guy out there because he just freaking says what he wants. Every politician has been held to a standard of not saying what people think is offensive. But this guy just says anything. He threatens people, but has he ever done anything? He fires people. He does all these crazy things.
He
but
detains people.
Everything he does, they still have the freedom of speech to
Boys
say.
and girls, I'm gonna get out of here. All right,
I gotta run.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks,
bye
guys.
bye. But I want to
you.
answer
Bye,
Vibe's question. So
gentlemen.
bye bye to all of you. But I want to answer Vibe's question. So the free speech, as I understand it, at least, and you can correct me if you have a different idea or a different thought of what it is, but it's the right to express your opinion or an idea without fear of retaliation, censorship, or legal sanction. And if you are asking me the question, at what point has Trump, against someone expressing an opinion or idea, used retaliation, threatened legal sanction, or censorship, I have a whole document I can send you. Let me, if you want, I can just list them all, but it's going to take a while.
If I'm a boss,
Huh?
A clear one is the law firms.
Yeah, the law firms. Yes, exactly. What's it called? I got it right here. Perkins Coie.
part of the government.
Perkins Coie for.
Right.
Hold on. So can you repeat that?
Okay.
No, Perkins Coie. The Trump administration issued an executive order on March 6, 2025, banning them from federal buildings because of who they represented.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. They're representing factions that are against the
That is a violation of free
You
speech.
just said it. You just said it. They're retaliating. They're retaliating against the law firm because of their private associations and private speech and representation of, which is all, if you look at Supreme Court case law, all protected by the First Amendment. That's all things that they're doing, and they're stating that the purpose is that, and so that's a clear violation of the First Amendment, and that's what the court found, and that there's currently an injunction against that action because it violates the First Amendment, among other things that it violates.
No, it doesn't. I just read out the First Amendment.
Hold
to
on.
you.
So if
religious speech press assembly, it's not against firing or getting rid of any entity that is against what you're doing.
if you're being fired because of your speech, are you facing retaliation because of your speech? If you're being, it's just a simple question. If you are fired because of your speech, right, because of what you said, either the opinion you expressed, the person you represented, the idea you proposed or advocated for, right? If you are fired because of that, did you face retaliation due to your speech? Yes or no?
No.
No?
Really? Wait. So if someone fires you, let's say the government fires you, let's say that you're a bureaucrat employee, you're just somebody at the equivalent of a DMV, and they fire you because you're a Republican, is that firing based on your protected speech?
No.
That's not even the right way to look at free speech to begin with.
You're disagreeing with. So just to be clear, well-established case law says that quote advocacy by attorneys falls within the category of private speech protected by the First Amendment. That's what the Supreme Court of the United States says. Now you can say I disagree with the Supreme Court, but it is well-established precedent that freedoms of association with clients and even just legal advice given to clients is covered by the First Amendment. And if you do a restriction based on that speech, it would be like banning ink or banning a bookstore. Well, I'm not banning you from publishing your book. I'm just banning the store. Like, that's just a dumb way to look at it. It's not how our First Amendment doctrine works.
Here's the thing about the First Amendment. The First Amendment has always been about protecting civilians and entities within our country against overreach from the government. And that's why you could say that some of the things that have happened under Trump has been a violation of those First Amendments, because the First Amendment should not and cannot act with its authority to infringe upon those type of rights. And when you see certain people not allowed into the White House, when you see lawsuits of, and again, whenever someone wants to make a case of it being defamatory or whatever, that's a different thing. I mean, we're talking about the fact that the government does need to be. We do have protections against the government using its authority.
And to be clear, the Trump banned the Associated Press because they wouldn't call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America.
which is a ridiculous
also
thing.
found by a Trump appointed judge said that even on that deferential standard, it was a humongously deferential standard. Basically, when you're dealing with government restricted spaces like that, it's like the only thing that you can't do is viewpoint discrimination if you open access to some class of people. And so it's an incredibly deferential standard, and Trump didn't even meet that. And what I would love is for some acknowledgement here. Yes, it was wrong for Trump to claim as a basis to retaliate against law firms their previous representation of clients for being against the government. What could be more violative of the First Amendment than that? And think about it. You guys don't have a lot of sympathy for the law firms because they're white shoe law firms. They make a shit ton of money. I understand that. But these law firms protect all of their other rights. The reason why it's most important when the lawyers are targeted, and why even Shakespeare wrote about this, and why it's so important to protect the lawyers, is they're the ones who fight for you in court. So when they are saying, "Hey, vendors, if you hire these law firms, you're not going to have a contract with us," of course it implicates First Amendment interests.
Now you do apply the standard when they went after Trump's lawyers, though, right? You're going to apply that standard, or no?
Hang on, no.
You can't say this is when these are the law firms protecting the government, and the governments have the contracts on that, and those law firms do not align with the government, they do have the right to fire them. But once going back,
but not for those reasons, right? So Vibe, it's a
law
good point.
firms
Vibe,
you're just wrong, Vibe. You're just wrong.
You're severely narrowing, but you're narrowing the Constitution. You're not just
hold
putting
on,
it on a pin.
please.
You're adopting this. You're adopting a very broad and wide, almost like spiritual understanding of what the United States is. The United States has never been a spiritual place. And that's something I like, maybe
not
now isn't the time to talk about that. But you're saying how I run my business is how the
that's why we're
runs.
talking
That's
about
not
it.
true.
So if, for example, the government canceled a contract and said, we're canceling this contract because the head of the CEO of this corporation is a Jew, would you say, well, they can cancel contracts, so I guess they can cancel this contract because he's a Jew? You'd say no. Just because the government generally has the power to cancel contracts doesn't mean that they can do so for a purpose.
But we find that standard is applied.
Canceling contracts is not a speech.
I understand that it's not, that canceling a contract is not speech. I understand that discrimination on the basis of religion is not speech. I'm not saying that is. I'm trying to give you an example that gets in your head about, hey, just because the government generally has this kind of authority doesn't mean they can't use that authority in a way that violates the Constitution. If you grant the religion example, let me give you the First Amendment example. Yes, you can cancel a contract for a variety of reasons, but you can't just cancel a contract because you have an association with a law firm that represents people that we don't like.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit. Pisco,
hold on. All this has been the most frustrating thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Where do you actually
I'm going
Where do you start
to
protection?
we're
Doesn't
just
make it
gonna
right.
start playing
Doesn't make
stupid
sense.
video
Sorry.
clips.
This message is sponsored in part by...
Please allow me the moment to read a few super chats that we didn't get to earlier, just because I wanted to get through time quickly. These are actually pretty comical, so they don't really require a whole lot of responses. The chat was sending in wine for me because this became a shit show pretty quick. Patriots are a go with the big 5. Thank you. Kissy Cat with the big 10, sending lots of wine. We also had some funny little dad jokes. What do you call a cow with 3 legs? Lean beef. A Kissy Cat again. What kind of bird doesn't have babies? A swallow.
Boo.
Sarah, why did you put that woman's ass on the stream?
You don't like asses? Would you prefer?
Tomato, fierce and red, juicy curves,
This message is sponsored in part by...
I'm pretty sure he prefers that.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
What would be wrong with
You complain about putting a woman's fine ass on a video. Plus, there's a horse. Everybody likes
This is my
horses.
first time on Raging Tomato. I didn't know.
Well,
That was shocking, by the way.
Disco, did it not get you to shut up?
Do not like
Yeah.
I guess it did. Yeah.
Kissy Cat with the big 5 says, which days of the week are the strongest? Saturday and Sunday, because the rest are weekdays. Kissy Cat with the big 5. Who were the greenest presidents in U.S. history? The Bushes. Kissy Cat again says, I can't take my dog to the pond anymore. The ducks keep attacking him. My bad for getting a purebred dog.
Boo.
Kissy Cat says, if a pig loses its voice, does it become disgruntled?
Boo.
Plant-based in with the big 5 says, asks the question, is Shawn or Misfit a flat earther? And I don't believe that they are. In this question, I'm a little hesitant to read, so I'm going to read it strategically. Ask Tubby on the left. I think Whick, when this came in, you were on the far left. If having Destiny promote you, who has been making death threats against other streamers, is that a threat to free speech?
No, because it's not government action. It could itself be kind of its own criminal
I don't
offense,
even
but
know if Destiny's promoting me anymore. I haven't talked to Destiny in months.
I wouldn't see death threats as a government activity, and because the First Amendment by its terms applies to the government action, it wouldn't be a First Amendment issue.
Pisco's correct.
Also, Destiny is facing his day in court for anything that he has done wrong, it seems.
Yeah, the courts will deal with that.
I agree.
Can
I agree.
So, is that the rest of the super chats? Am I allowed to?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I think one of the problems that we run into, especially with like Trump supporters defending his lack of ability to infringe on our First Amendment speech, is that we have like direct quotes from him explaining why he's doing these certain things. We can say that he was trying to revoke the status of Mahmoud Khalil or Ozturk because they were supporting a Hamas or whatever. But when days before he says to a speech full of donors, quote, one thing I do, any student that protests, I throw them out of the country. You know, there are a lot of foreign students. As soon as they hear that, they're going to behave. Let's not pretend like it's because they're like spreading like terrorist propaganda. It's because he's trying to crack down on our right to protest. That's like explicitly what he said to the group of donors.
And can we also acknowledge, please, right, that the First Amendment and free speech, the First Amendment protects free speech, but free speech exists outside of the First Amendment. Free speech as a concept exists outside of the First Amendment. So while the First Amendment may not exist in Russia, I still would advocate for people in Russia to have free speech, even if they aren't protected under the First Amendment. Does that make sense?
And
so
I'm willing to grant
about
all
the
of these
concept,
points.
if I may finish just real quick, when we talk about the concepts of free speech, when we talk about these things, when we even if I grant you, and I don't, to be clear, that, oh, well, non-citizens maybe not be protected the same under the First Amendment, that is still a threat to their free speech. And just because you find a legal loophole that allows you to attack someone's free speech does not mean you are not a threat to free speech.
That's a good point.
Pretty clear.
I will grant all these things if you guys will grant that there is also a more systemic problem threatening free speech more than just one candidate. And the reason I say that is because long before Trump, we've had these kinds of issues, and even with other presidents, we've had issues like anti-BDS laws,
I
which
grant
are
you.
I'm
not here to argue.
Which clear an infringement on the First Amendment.
I'm not here to argue. Hold on, just if I may
Obama
respond to that just real quick. I'm not here to argue that
I'm
Trump
gonna
is
play
the
off of
sole
Whick then.
offender. He is not. We have had I have had problems with many administrations and how they have handled free speech. My argument tonight is that Trump is the worst offender, and I have again provided evidence and cases and well, I haven't shown the documents, right? But I have documents showing
would you agree?
over and over and over again.
I want to shift it only because Grid is getting ready to leave in a few minutes. So I just want to allow Grid some space to talk real quick, and then it'll open up the panel to bring Ryan back up too.
Yeah, I don't really have any other questions. It's been kind of going round robin, back and forth. I'd actually really like to hear Corinth see what his questions are. It'd be interesting.
Wait, I have a question for you, Grid. Do you agree that going after law firms on the basis of who they are affiliated with and for past representations is a problem for the First Amendment, and he shouldn't have done it?
Hang on, I got to turn that up.
Absolutely a
The law
problem.
firms still have full free speech.
No,
It's the
they
worst
don't.
problem
Not
you
if they're
could-
being not if
It's
they're
the
being
worst-
threatened
Pisco,
by the
that's the
government.
worst-
They're being
it's the
punished for
worst
their free
problem.
speech, which is
You're
also
not
a violation of the
attacking
First Amendment.
business, You're attacking
Can
a
we just-
procedure. Shut up.
I'm sorry.
No,
I just want to make that clear. Just because you can still speak doesn't mean you haven't been punished for your speech, and it is against the First Amendment for the government to punish
the
you
First
for your
Amendment says
speech.
you cannot be punished for your speech. You still have the free speech.
It says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, and that's been understood. That's a general term.
That's
It doesn't
Congress. That's
literally-
government, right?
So that's been understood. So that's been understood to be not just Congress, but also to extend to the executive branch that's implementing Congress's will. Okay, so it's broader than just Congress, but it is government directed. And so, just to give you an example, just because it says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, doesn't mean it only applies to literal spoken words. We understand that the freedom of speech means something beyond its most narrow reading of it, which is spoken word. It applies to books, print media. It applies to private representations, associations.
Art.
It's understood basically in the English common
So
law.
where
With the
are
English
we-
common law
where
definition.
are we
Pisco,
discussing that
I
right
would
now?
I would also argue as well that if you look at things like Miranda rights, how their Miranda rights got expanded, there was a time when it was a narrow understanding of those your Fifth Amendment rights only being in a court, but now they've been able to expand that to the entire engagement whenever you're encountering law enforcement. So we have these kinds of cases. But I'm just saying there is case studies to show that these things become expanded. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sure. I would agree with that. But you don't even have to grant, because I know Miranda people have a problem with it because it's kind of like a precautionary rule that you have to say these special magic words, and so people think it's a little too spooky. But I agree with you. But you don't even have to grant the kind of more expansionist, living constitutionalist framework. And I'm not saying that you're doing that, but I'm just saying that a lot of people will do that. The core of political speech is associational freedoms and being able to have private dialogues with individuals. And here you're being punished because of your private representation with clients who are politically disfavorable to the government. That's core speech, and it's happening to the people who
hold
are
on.
in the best
Pisco,
position to
Pisco,
fight the government.
Slow down.
There's
You asked me a question. I'm trying to understand
This
the
is an
question.
example of free
Hold on,
speech.
hold on,
right
hold on,
here.
hold on, Vibe.
Yeah,
Go
just
ahead,
calm
Greg.
down a minute. Calm down a minute. So, did Trump make a law saying that he wouldn't deal with those people?
No, he used his executive actions to specifically call out those law firms. And for example,
in what way?
So here's some concrete things. So number one, there's a reporting requirement now for government contractors that if you're associated with these law firms, you need to tell the government about it, and they're canceling contracts because of associations and forcing these contractors to not have representation with these law firms. Number two, they're specifically canceling all meetings between clients.
Okay, how is that speech?
And the government that are represented by
Make the connection to speech.
Okay. Retribution because of speech, right? Any
Well, that's
negative
not
government
speech.
action. So stop.
So
Just
Pisco,
because.
let me give you an example of my company.
Please.
I do not work with porn companies because that's against
Right.
my.
I mean, this
my
is
ethics,
exactly.
right? Am I?
We're going off topic.
You're not the government.
There's
You're not the
free
government.
speech.
So I don't have to address it because you're not the government. Right?
I really want to interact with Pisco on this because I want to do it in good faith. So if you don't
I'm trying
mind,
to address it.
Yeah.
So just because the regulation, the executive action itself doesn't target doesn't ban speech, right? That's what you're looking for. It doesn't mean it doesn't implicate the First Amendment. It doesn't implicate the First Amendment. So any kind of government retribution on the basis of speech. So for example, if they charge you with a crime, it's a high standard, but solely on the basis of your First Amendment activities, that would be a First Amendment issue, notwithstanding the fact the government is allowed to charge in the main. Now, in the case of these different activities,
can I ask you a question before you go too much further?
Yeah, I'll give you one more example.
Okay.
If, for example, they said we're not going to give you a liquor license, the government says this because you're a Republican, it would be a First Amendment issue. Agreed?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not
because that would be a
direct
political
speech.
affiliation. But if you said
Correct.
I'm not going to give you a liquor license because you served underage people or you're opening a bar where I don't want one, that's not.
That would be different. That would be different.
Yeah.
But what they're saying here, right? What they're saying and what they put in their purposes is we're going after these law firms because of prior representation, because of the law firm's stated views on DEI, and because that you were opposed to the government. They listed out 4 reasons, and all 4 of them implicate First Amendment issues. So yes, there could be some legitimate basis.
Reasons.
The government itself, the president of the United States, he issued orders specifically
he
targeting
literally
law
said
firms.
because you supported DEI that you were no longer allowed government contracts.
Yeah, so here I'll read out the different
read
reasons. There's 4 of them. So reason number 1, the firm's representation. This is Perkins Coie. The firm's representations of Hillary Clinton during the 2016 presidential election. First Amendment interest. You're talking about the private association with Hillary Clinton. That's core First Amendment, and private speech and private representation is private speech protected by the First Amendment.
Look, I could see whether it's like interference in business or something like that. I'm not seeing where that's a freedom of speech issue.
Yeah, so the
You're
Supreme
not-
Court
you're
has
not tying that up for
Yeah, so first you asked for the four purposes. I'm trying to give you the purposes. I thought we agreed that retaliation on the basis of speech is implicating the First Amendment interest. Did you not agree with that?
I agree with that, but you're not showing me that representation you're not showing me that representation qualifies as speech.
Yes. So it's well settled law that advocacy by attorneys.
Can you give me an example of anything I can go look at this
is Legal Services Corp.
Give me a legal foundation for this, because right now what it sounds like is this is yours and others' opinion that's never been tried out in a court of law.
I can give you
two, and therefore
you have to tamp it in though. If you're gonna say that this is purely procedural, if this is actual jurisprudence or it's in the law.
He's trying to cite.
I'm trying to cite two cases to you. So first case, NAACP versus Button. This is 371 U.S. 415. Quote: the First Amendment protects vigorous advocacy, certainly of lawful ends against government intrusion, including litigation, which is thus a form of political expression. That's a Supreme Court saying that. The other case is Legal Services Corporation. Hang on, I can get the full citation, but it's 531 U.S. at 542, and it says that advocacy by attorneys to the courts falls within the category of private speech protected by the First Amendment. Those are two legal citations to the Supreme Court saying that that representation is protected by the First Amendment.
Right, but did the Supreme Court rule that they were in fact free speech violations? You're saying there's citations to the Supreme Court.
Other case law. So this case is now going through the courts, and one court, the district court, the first layer of review, has said that that's unconstitutional. It's against the First Amendment. So
I get that. I understand the lower courts. All right, look, I would really like to get into this with you at some point. Unfortunately, I've actually streamed like 7 hours a day.
Okay, well, thank you for coming.
And I'm fucking going to bed.
Good night.
Are you going to brush your teeth?
What the fuck?
I'm not letting you.
I'm trying to drag it out for him more because he seemed to be doing that
don't.
with Pisco
Okay.
there, so I was trying to assist him.
Thanks for stopping by, Grid. We appreciate you.
Thanks for dropping a 60 to kick me.
I tried to get Admiral Gibbs over here for you. He's a cool dude.
I'll debate him.
I like Gibbs.
I think he followed me on X. Actually, I remember that name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Admiral Akbar from.
See you guys.
Before we had
Wick wants to go, can I go after Wick because I have been waiting patiently to see.
Yeah, Mel had a question too. For
Yeah.
me, as well.
Go ahead. Absolutely.
Get it, Mel.
I'll be brief. When you are told that unless you better watch what you say, or we're going to ban you from a federal building. If you better watch what you say, or we're going to fine you. You better watch what you say, or we're going to take away your security clearance. You better watch what you say, and if you speak out against us, we're going to do these things. This is viewpoint. It's called viewpoint discrimination. You are discriminating against someone's viewpoint, their opinion, and that absolutely is a violation of someone's free speech of the First Amendment. The reason that that's true is because it creates a chilling effect, a disincentive. It dissuades people from speaking their mind because they know if they do, that the government will come in and punish them. Therefore, their free speech is abridged. Do we understand this? Do we agree with this? Vibe, do you agree?
No, not totally.
What part don't you agree with?
Okay, so we have amendments. We're allowed to speak. We can speak whatever we want. Now, there are consequences. If I go
There's some
and
categories
I say to
of
my
unprotected
boss,
speech.
he's sleeping with my wife, even if he's not, he can fire me just for being an idiot.
Correct.
I still have the free speech to say, I think you're sleeping with my wife. And he's like, I'm not. He can still fire me. Right?
Correct.
Now, I have the right to say that. And he still has the right to fire me. But I lost my job. And I can still, even after he fires me, I can say my boss is an a-hole because I have that right. Right?
Correct.
So, yes, people can punish you for saying the wrong things, and you can you can go back. You can go to court and go, you know, I should have been. You can
Wait
go
a
to
second.
the Board of Labor. Like there's a government process to make sure when things like that and injustices like that happen, you still have a legal opportunity to say, hey, my free speech was not
Let me
wrong.
ask you. So let's ask: can a government termination ever be a basis of a First Amendment violation? Do you believe that government termination can ever be cognizable as a First Amendment issue?
Sorry.
If you were fired, so in your example, you're using a private employer, I'm assuming, so that's not
Yes.
First Amendment because it's not government. So let's move it over to the government realm, right? Can a termination by a government ever be a First Amendment issue?
That's a good question,
must
right?
be, right?
So we switched from a Democratic government to a Republican government, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you know your staff there is going against what your goals are now. Yes, you still have the right to go, hey, you're not on board. You're not drinking the Kool-Aid, just like in a corporate company. If you're not drinking the Kool-Aid.
So you're actually, yeah. So here, it is more complicated than I'm letting on in some areas. So for certain political appointees, because you actually, speech is one of the things, right? You shouldn't be forced to hire your attorney general on not speech related grounds. But what we're talking about is a little bit more specific. It's, let's say in the context of just random bureaucrats, right? Like just regular bureaucrats, or in the case, put it aside to the government as employer, the government imposing sanctions on private employers for who they hire. So let's say that the government says, okay, we're going to give you guys licenses to be fishermen, but every fisherman that you hire, it better be someone who supports Trump, or it better be a Democrat. Otherwise, you're not going to get the fishery license, or you're going to get worse preferred fishery. And then the fisheries start firing people who aren't Trump supporters. That would be a First Amendment issue, notwithstanding the fact that they can still technically be Trump supporters. Agreed?
Well, okay. So I want to get a little clarity on that, right?
Yeah.
So where exactly on this fisherman are they, is the government saying that you have to hire this type of person? And what is that type of person?
Yeah, the government's not saying it explicitly. It's saying, hey, guys, we have a new policy. Our new policy is we only give fishing permits to corporations that hire only Biden supporters. So, but you can still hire your Biden supporters if you. Or
But
Trump
we know that
supporters if you
doesn't
want.
happen, right? So it's going to be more
It's a hypothetical. It's a
Blink,
thought
it's a thought
experiment to show
experiment.
You can only hire this race, or you can only do this, or whatever,
but
right?
now we're doing the First Amendment stuff, right? So the First Amendment stuff where the government is saying we are going to impose a burden on private actors if
So I'm
they don't
asking,
comply
give me
with
an
our
example of that
ideology.
burden.
Okay, Blink isn't going to get it, and I'm sorry, but I've been waiting patiently to ask my question. John Mosman, you said you were talking about systemic forms of people having their free speech tread upon. Would one of those forms be McCarthyism to you?
Yes.
Burning books?
Yes.
So what do you think about the Trump administration literally burning books in Pentagon libraries? That way kids can't read about transgender stuff.
Well, I don't know of any facts of that case, but if that is the case, I think that's wrong. And I think that would be obviously a First Amendment issue.
Okay, can you
violation.
Mosman? Is that how you say your name, sir?
Yeah, that's my
Mosman,
last name.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So you acknowledge that Perkins Coie is a First Amendment issue, and that the government,
Yes.
if we are presenting the facts correctly, that is a violation of the First Amendment.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Beautiful. We can get here, right? So it isn't just Perkins Coie they're doing this with. They're doing it with Covington and Burlington. Covington and Burling. They're doing it with Wilmer Hill. They're doing it with Jenner and Block. They're doing it with Paul Wise. And these are all executive orders. So to keep in mind, this isn't a law that they're trying to pass through legislation. Trump is literally signing and executing executive orders.
Which is not a legal law, which is not by any because it doesn't come from the Constitution. It comes from Congress, which is where legitimate binding laws are made.
Yeah, well,
which is one of my reasons why I don't like Trump is all the executive decisions.
There's some authority here, like no one is saying that Trump doesn't. Like, think about this, right? Does the executive branch not have the power to make things off limits to certain people, or to decide when to take meetings, or decide who gets access or who has classified information clearance? In the main, the executive branch
that metric is very that metric though we've way surpassed that metric. We've just the number amount of executive
not
decisions.
Because we recognize, not because we think that Trump doesn't actually have the power in general to decide
I know
who the
that's why you
plaintiff
guys
and-
would not disagree
yeah.
with it, because you would be okay.
Well, no, I think
with,
the
you're
executive
okay with the
overreach has been
Biden
going on
executive
for years.
decisions.
I would just grant you that. Executive overreach has been going on for years. Obama did it. Trump 1 did it. Biden did it.
Bush did it.
Reagan did it, right? Like, going back.
The executive overreach is not into the Congress's authority. The executive overreach is into the individual rights of these entities and these individuals. It's not interbranch. There are other areas which are 100%. I agree with you and Whick 100%. There are overreach from the executive in other areas, but in this specific area, it's not interbranch. It is into the individual rights component. We're talking about the First Amendment.
Right.
That's the issue.
And a lot of times it comes out of a conflict with something with enforcement of some type. And that's
the only reason I'm saying this, the only reason I'm saying this is to kind of short circuit.
Give me 1 second, please. Pisco said one thing that yes, there is executive overreach. I mean, again, like not losing center, because this is a debate about Trump taking away free speech or being a threat to it. There's not always executive overreach. There has been in the past. It's been specific. It's been something that you've been able to identify. But like government, like executive overreach isn't just like business as usual. That's one of the
executive overreach is beside the point. What I'm trying to say with my whole entire argument is, even if they have the legitimate power to do something, if they do something in an illegitimate way, right? If they use that legitimate power that they have to threaten someone's free speech or to punish someone or to retaliate against some entity or individual because of their free speech, it is illegitimate, even if they would otherwise have that power, and it would be a legitimate power to hold. That's my entire argument. Do you disagree, Mr. Mosman?
John?
I would
John,
ask.
you're muted.
Sorry, I am muted myself. No, I
do you
would
feel like
disagree
your
with that.
speech is any less?
You would disagree with that. Why?
Or is more restricted?
No, I don't disagree with that.
Oh, you don't disagree? Okay, then
Yeah,
I think that, look, you're a reasonable man. I'd love to have a conversation with you sometime. Because one of the frustrating things about this conversation is the
John
refusal.
isn't reasonable. Just for the record, I love John. But
No,
he's not
he is.
reasonable.
Fuck with Duck is the person who's unreasonable.
I want to say something real quick after
Anyway,
Wick's done.
Wick was trying to
Wick,
finish.
have you
Yeah,
lost
I'm just trying to
any
finish up my
speech
point.
since
Jesus,
the
come
second
on.
term of Trump?
Can we let Wick
I keep
finish
getting half a
his
point
thought,
out,
please?
and it becomes, people are like, what are you trying to say? Well, if you let me finish, maybe we can get there. Okay? So one of the frustrating things about the conversation that we had before, and what I think that was very telling, is that the refusal to admit any wrongdoing when the wrongdoing was very, very clear and very, very obvious. Let he who has eyes see, let he who has ears hear, right? It is obvious, I think, to the audience, and I think to, well, even you, Mr. Mosman, even though I think I get the sense we would disagree with each other politically, and you might disagree with my assertion that Trump is the worst of the worst here, right? But
I
you would
don't necessarily disagree with that.
Okay, but you would acknowledge, right? You would acknowledge that there is violations that have been done by Trump and are currently being done by Trump.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that the fact that Shawn Farash, I don't mean to get his name wrong, or the Misfit Patriot refused to acknowledge a single thing, I think shows a level of dishonesty that was frustrating to deal with. That's all I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Can
I agree. And so, well, hang on, because I'm actually going to bounce after I say this. But first of all, I mean, although I also disagree with John on many, many things, he was on my channel recently, and we had a nice conversation where he agreed that he would stand in the street with me at a hands-off protest if one came near us together, and he would
John's
support
right.
pushing. for the
John's nice.
impeachment
He's
of
just not
Donald
rational.
Trump. So yeah,
just not
sure.
rational.
But when it comes to standing against Donald Trump right now, I appreciated that much. But I wanted to say I think I wanted to highlight the irony of, on a panel about free speech, where Whick and Pisco made a genuinely compelling case that Donald Trump poses a real threat to that. We had Grid paying $60 to boot me off the panel. And I understand this is not a First Amendment.
A little
violation.
salty
I
there, but
understand
it's
that.
okay.
Nobody owes me a platform, but you're shelling out cash just to silence dissent because you can't refute it. It reeks of insecurity. And speaking of cowardice, I want to address one other thing that Shawn said earlier. He claimed him and other parents were put on a domestic terror watch list. As far as I can tell, that's just a lie. There's no evidence that happened. The courts threw out that entire case for lack of standing. Even the Supreme Court refused to hear it because it was completely unsubstantiated. On my channel, on Wick's and on Pisco's, we welcome conservatives. You just saw it happen. Whick was inviting John Mosman onto his panel. Even fragile, petty cowards like Grid, we actually believe in our values, and we're not afraid of being challenged, and that's what real free speech looks like. Thank you, Sarah. You have a wonderful night. Love you all.
Wait, what's your channel called?
Radical Coder.
Hell yeah, a new sub.
Thanks,
I mean-
Pisco. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work.
I would probably add as well that it is kind of crazy that he kicked all of us in order to, when the other conservatives had limited time to come on and be like, Pisco, Whick, can you name one good thing that Trump has done instead of like letting anybody ask a question?
And I want to make clear that
I
we
think that
did.
was pretty
We had no
crazy.
problem with doing it, right? And then he went on to ignore the fact that we had done it and pretend that we just hadn't. And he went on with his little
And
narrative.
then they didn't have anything for Biden except for bombing people.
And
But I
this
do-
is a double standard. The double standard that is so frustrating in these conversations that I'm
Yeah, it's
willing
a real
to
double
admit
standard,
to the errors that the leftists have engaged in when it comes to free speech, but they just say nothing.
I
Say
do
nothing.
want to ask.
you guys
I-
didn't even.
Real quick, I do want to ask because this is something that doesn't get covered a lot, and I think it's absolutely insane. So there's a guy named Sebastian Gorka, right? He's the deputy assistant to the president, and he's the senior director for counterterrorism. Recently, he
You
just
said
asked the
Sebastian
question.
Gorka. Oh, my gag reflexes.
Yeah, I know. He went on Newsmax and he asked the question of if people who come out in support of Mahmoud Khalil are technically aiding and abetting terrorism.
Yeah, he did say that.
That's fucking crazy. That's somebody who works for Trump's administration. So I want to ask, like, that would be a direct example of going after criminal prosecutions for people who are coming out and using their First Amendment rights. Is that something that Trump supporters would condemn? And is that like, are we now asking for Sebastian Gorka to step out of the Trump administration? Because I would sure hope that if we have like a principled adherence to the First Amendment, we would be calling for him to step down over some shit like that. That's crazy.
Well, to be fair, I would want him out regardless before whatever he said, because I know the type of things that he says and they make me sick. I mean, he's a lot like Prager, and I can't stand Prager either. And
I missed this clip.
So yeah.
I didn't hear any
I
of
do
you
have to
guys
go
bring
soon.
up
So does any
anything about
conservative
how they
have a
tried
question, or even a
to-
liberal, right? Does any conservative or a
Oh, wait.
liberal or anyone have a direct question for me that I can answer before I go? Something I said that you didn't agree with, or you want further clarification on, anything like that? I'd be happy to answer. And now is your time to shine, boys and girls. So go ahead.
Wick,
Sure, why not?
I have a general question. You've been one of the more successful liberal podcasters and stuff like this. I'm just curious if you've noticed anything change since Trump's been in office for 120 days. Like, it's not typically something I or a lot of the people I associate work with, but I'm just curious, kind of wishing you luck, but also like, kind of how the reception's been for you out in the marketplace of ideas
I
and
don't
stuff.
see. I'll just be honest. I haven't seen a meaningful difference in reception for me. I mean, I am growing and I'm going on bigger shows now, right? I'm going to get probably going back on Tim Pool on the 23rd, right? That's not set in stone yet, but that is in the works. But yeah, it's hard to answer that question. Sorry, right? I just don't. I haven't noticed an appreciable difference that I could relate to Trump taking office. I just can't.
I mean, do
mean,
any of you
I
guys
would like
have
to
a
point
problem with them going after Trump and trying to impeach him when he was a private citizen? I didn't hear anybody
Not at
bring
all.
that up.
Wait, what's the
Trippy, what are you
problem?
talking
What's
about?
What do you
They
think?
tried to
By the way,
impeach Trump while
sorry,
he wasn't even
before we
president.
get into this, can I just quickly
wait a
sign
second.
off? I just want to quickly sign off. Thank you for having me, Sarah.
Take care, man.
Pisco, Wick, nice to see you around. I didn't expect to see you guys out here, but it's good to see you. By the way, folks, we have a show on Friday, me versus Rob Noor with the prompt. Is there a difference between sex and gender? So that should be really fun. Be sure to show up for that open panel as well.
Good luck and prepare for the FISA warrants.
All right, make
Have a
sure
good
to
one.
invite me, Gizmo, there. I've got a good debate
Someone
on
just
that.
said.
No,
Someone just said
DM me if
that-
you want to. We'll help prepping for that one.
Okay, thanks. You can reach out too, because I don't have you in my DMs. Sorry, Pisco. Were you going to say something before?
No. Thank you. No.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for the thanks. Someone was talking about the impeachment of Trump. You were like, you have a problem with Trump.
The
being
attempted
impeached?
impeachment of Trump while he was not a president.
Let me ask you this: Is that
Whoa! You just
They
said-
attempted. Listen.
Before
Yo,
you guys kick into
I
that,
hate
and I
that
will
shit.
hand it back. I will hand it back. We started a quick goal because it's either I just go to bed or we continue trucking on. And Josh sends the big 5 asking or saying Pisco is still shell shocked from the horse video. Did that throw you off a little bit? Not
It threw me off my game a little. Not gonna lie. Yeah, I was blushing a bit.
I mean, that is kind of the purpose of the D-Gen videos. The doggy watching doggy porn one is my favorite. It actually really it's cute, but
sounds illegal.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know what
I did a panel on that.
Doggy watching dog porn.
Someone just said, "Is this clown guy? Whatever clown guy."
Yeah, my mouth moves when I talk.
You're aware that Trump was impeached while he was president the second time, right?
Yeah. Okay. Whatever. He wasn't impeached this time.
Wait a
Hold
second.
on a minute.
So
no.
I was
Don't you know me
Wait
and then
a second.
start screaming.
Hold on.
He has not been
you
impeached
were
while he's
wrong.
been in office the second time. That
Yes,
was
he
a
was.
blatant
Wait.
lie.
All I had to do to have you was sign up for tier 2. Cause you're my Patreon girl, and your love for me depends on how much money that I pledge to you monthly.
Gentlemen, I wasn't done reading them because the group has come to a conclusion that they want to keep going. So Kissy Cat sent in a 2 and a 2 and a 2, and then she settles down, hammers it in with the big 50 to say, we're staying, keep going. So I am now betrothed
5
to
minutes.
all of you.
Just FYI. So
That's fine for you, but I'm obligated nonetheless. So
Hey,
Pisco
Sarah, do you mind
and
if
hold on.
say a
because
little statement?
She's not done.
Are you leaving?
No, I'm not. I just wanted to say I love
it
actually
to-
Pisco and Whick.
Okay.
Hey, love you, vibe. Keep it real.
So I've got a question. I've got a question for
Wait,
the
having
what?
fun.
Hold up.
You guys are cucking the fuck out of me.
I just said I wanted to give it back to Pisco. Okay.
Thank you
let's
so
give
much,
it
Sarah.
back.
Hey, love it. So Trippy Cast or whoever, the whatever clown guy.
Yeah, you got it right.
You admit that you were wrong when you said Trump wasn't impeached during his second term, right?
He hasn't been impeached during his second
I'm
term.
sorry. During his first term, the second impeachment during his first term.
I know he was
impeached while he was in office.
That's stupid. I didn't say anything about that. You're the one that said that I didn't know he was impeached the first fucking time he was in office.
No. The second time he was impeached while he was in office, right? You agree with that?
He was impeached during his first fucking term. Yes, sure. But they tried to impeach him while he wasn't even president as well. And you guys have ignored that.
They successfully impeached him while he was
One
in
time.
office. No, twice.
Okay.
When are you
whatever.
impeached?
Okay. And what was the purpose? To try to get him out of office? Did it work? Did it fail? How many impeachments do you need to have before you're kicked out?
To be clear, do you
Come on.
agree, right? Wait, you agree, don't you, that both impeachments of Donald Trump happened while he was in office, correct?
Was he impeached twice while he was in office? I'm actually out
Yes,
of
he was
the loop.
impeached twice while in office. Wait, so do you not know?
Hang on a second.
Wait, I just
Why
wanna know,
do you
right
have
now,
to
do
change
Thank
the
you,
subject?
Sarah,
know
for
or
hosting.
not-
I have to
wait,
go. I love
Do you know or not know whether he
God, ladies and gentlemen, did you enjoy the show? Did you enjoy whatever that was? Give me a second. I'll hop in. I'll talk to you guys for just a few minutes before I have to go. 1 second, please. Let's make sure it's my face up here that you guys can see. Let me adjust my screen just a little bit. Right. Let's put this up here. We had a little fun experience, right? We had our friend President Sunday show up. What a great experience! And pay him $5 to call me fat. Well, great. I mean, it's a waste of $5, but hey, I'm just glad that he can't quit me. I haven't talked about President Sunday. I feel like months, maybe even no, that hasn't been a year, probably months. Guys, still can't quit me. Beautiful. Thank you, Mosman. But Mosman, add me on Discord. Discord's Whick TV. We can set something up. I will be brief. Bless Pisco's heart. Bless Pisco's heart. It was very hard to actually be able to participate in that debate. But I love Pisco. Pisco, no shade. I just need some time to go through my points. My toes got stepped on, that's all. But even then, I think it was a clear victory for Team Whick. I don't think it was close. We had evidence and facts on our side. They had vibes. Yeah, it was just kind of It was kind of disappointing. I thought that they would be prepared. Like, at least with the basics of the just the highlights, because we didn't bring up anything niche. We weren't bringing up niche topics that people weren't discussing. We brought up the deportation of visa holder and revoking of visas. Two of the most popular cases were Mahmoud Khalil and that I can't pronounce her name, Ortuz, the op-ed lady. We we brought up the Perkins Coie, which again, the main law firm. We brought up the FCC stuff, which everyone's talking about. These were predictable things to be talked about. You'd think you'd have at least a grasp of them, like at least the basics. I understand not being an expert at everything. I'm not an expert at everything. That's fine, right? But this idea of editorial discretion as well. The FCC can't make a law that violates the First Amendment. We would say that's wrong. They can't do that. If the FCC has a law, news distortion law, and they're using it to violate someone's First Amendment protected speech, their editorial discretion, that law is null and void. The Constitution overrides that law. I would love to have the discussion again, just me versus those two. That'd be great. Or just me versus one of them. Just to kind of drive home a few points, right? I did want to get into the concept of free speech more. I wanted to get into outside of the legal realm of things, the concept of allowing people to speak their mind without the government or even fellow citizens punishing them for that speech, right? And we can, I think a good example of this is that societies which are more tolerant of their citizenry, right? And I'm not talking the government here. I'm talking fellow citizens. Fellow citizens that are more tolerant with dissenting opinions, right, are better to live in. They're better places to, they're more, human flourishing explodes in those locations. And until very recently, America was one of the few places on earth that had that as a core American value. I hate what you say, but I will defend your right to say it, right? Recently, it has been that core value has come under attack, and Trump is leading the charge. He's not the only offender here. I want to be clear. Not the only offender here, but he is the worst offender here. What we got coming up this week? Oh, we got some great shows, ladies and gentlemen. Great shows. We're going to be talking to Enemy Charlie and let me make sure I get the name correctly. I am terrible with names. Tolly Bots. Tomorrow we're going to be talking and having a debate between those two women fighting for our amusement. They're going to be debating on whether or not feminism has gone too far. Then on Wednesday, we're going to have Ryan. We're going to have Shenandoah, or Ryan McClellan. Oh, God. Mullally, sorry. Ryan Mullally, Ryan C. Mullally, a lawyer. He's been on the show before. And we're going to be talking to Shenandoah, and we're talking to History Impossible. And we're going to be talking about the woke right, and that should be a fun discussion. And then, finally, on Friday, we're going to have Sid come on and talk about tariffs. So if you're a Republican or a conservative and want to debate someone on tariffs, hit me up. I still need someone for Friday. Any questions before I go? Any thoughts, any comments, anything that you all have to say on any of this before we head out? Anything? Well held on my end. Well, thank you, Multiculturalist James. I do appreciate it. Okay. Well, thank you for putting up with the debate. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching me. Phineas, thank you for your comments. Boning stuff. Nice to see you. Connect Pause. Also nice to see you. I know Cooey. Is that how you pronounce it? I am sorry. Perkins Cooey. Pronunciation is my Achilles heel. I apologize for that. It's always going to get me. MST3Ker says you at least were calm and presented your points, but the other two were like, well, that's your opinion, man. Yeah, it was very hard to deal with it. Yes, Tali. I hope I'm saying that right. Tali Bots. I wanted to get the full name in, but she'll be joining us tomorrow. It should be fun. Yeah. Thank you for the donations. Oh, I should read the super chats. That would be nice. $5 from Ben Riley to say the GOP put a bill in to ban adult content, which is in Project 2025, so that seems to counter to free speech, right? Correct. Then $5 from Pondering Politics that says, well done fighting the good fight. Thank you for the $5. I appreciate the super chats. All the donations go directly to my pocketbook to do fun things with. Okay. I love you all. I'm going to end the show. Good night.